It's dangerous, Victoria mumbled at the same time Killian shouted. When will you stop coveting my mate? Is it until I cut off all your limbs and leave them for rogues to feast on? We all shrank away at the viciousness of his words. He fixed his gaze on Cedric, who took a step back, clutching the nape of his neck. It was clear he meant it. My mate had really considered chopping up a wizard and feeding him to feral hounds. Your Majesty, if I may speak, Crystal said, sounding tired all of a sudden. Cedric is just a dumb child. Although it would be safer for Amethyst to stay with the coven, we dare not covet her. That was what she said, but it was different from what I knew. It's not safer. She's a hybrid. What are you saying, Mother Crystal? Victoria piped in. It's dangerous for hybrids to stay in covens, so... Excuse me, Crystal cut her off. Who is this strange woman speaking? The first time I met Crystal, I took her for a calm and motherly old woman, but now she looked like a snake ready to strike at Victoria. I understood she was a bit upset at her for using forbidden magic, and even hiding from the coven that had searched for her for over 2 decades, but her character change was amazing. Mother Crystal. Victoria choked out. It must hurt for Victoria to have such a reunion with a close family member, but it was not my business. Why do you call me that name? Only certain people can call me that. The women continued to bicker. Killian and I shared a look before he decided to drive them out. Victoria left with a backward glance at me that made my heart ache. I steeled my heart. I was done being swayed by this woman and her existence. In the end, I made a speedy recovery thanks to the blessing of the goddess, and I came out of the bedroom. News had spread around the city that there were indeed people trying to assassinate the royal family, and every day, a different group of people came to apologize to me for causing me hardship in already trying times. I later found out that Killian threatened the protesters, so they came to apologize with various kinds of gifts. Mary came back to work for me, and Scarlet already contacted her. I asked Killian to pay special attention to her safety since we couldn't afford for her to die before we convicted Scarlet. We were secretly preparing a trial to convict Scarlet of high treason. We had a witness to her plot, Mary, but that was it. Mary's words would not hold water against Scarlet, and since the bottle of poison disappeared and the poison specialists could not identify the brand of poison, things may be tricky. My idea was to beg Victoria to make the bottle again, but if things really went to trial, she would be exposed as a witch and also as a part of the murder plot, so she may not agree. Speak of the devil, you called for me, Your Majesty? Victoria entered my office with Ella behind her, and my mouth almost fell open. For the 101 times I had sent Ella to look for her in the past, I received 101 rejections, so seeing her walking into my office surprised me, even though I invited her. Ella served refreshments and promptly left us alone. I watched the woman as she sipped her tea, her posture stiff while her eyes avoided mine. You grew up well? She broke the silence. All without thanks to you. The snarky words escaped my lips before I thought them through. Did you expect me to die? No, of course not. She continued to avoid eye contact. I am just glad that you are well. I have a question for you. I cut to the chase. Why did you abandon me? The question that plagued me on rainy nights slipped from my lips. My hands trembled as I picked up my cup. I put it down before it reached my mouth and then proceeded to wipe my sweaty hands on my dress. I clenched my fists to stop my fingers from drumming on my thighs. I had no choice, she said, and my heart slowed. I was prepared to hear anything ranging from how she wasn't ready for a child to how I should be grateful she didn't abort me. When she spoke with her head bowed like that, I didn't know what to do. I didn't even know what to feel. What do you mean you had no choice? I snarled. Although I am grateful not to have been raised by that devil, I can't think of a good reason for a mother to abandon their infant because they had no choice, as you put it. I sneered, bitterness blooming in my heart. There were so many reasons she could have given, but this one didn't fill the void in my heart. No, it only poured bitterness and hatred into the void. It seems you know everything, she said with a sigh, as if she alone carried the weight of the world. If I answer your question, will you answer one of mine? I opened my mouth on a retort to tell her she owed me an explanation at least, and I owed her nothing, but she beat me to the punch. Just one question. I just need to know one thing. Fine. I can at least answer one question. Now, tell me, why did you abandon me? If you know everything, you must know I fell in love with a man who already had a family. She gave me a wretched smile. I was stupid enough to believe it was fate, but it was all his doing. He needed a witch, and like a fool, I submitted myself to him. Your father. Let's call him Alpha Hawk. Calling such a person my father made my stomach turn. Yes, it must be unsettling for you. I am sorry. She kept mute for a minute after that, and I took the time to observe her. She looked nothing like the portraits the coven kept, and while I knew she used magic to change her appearance, magic couldn't change her demeanor. From the portraits and what I heard, she was a bubbly and strong witch who even became the leader of her coven. How did such a woman, because this weak and timid woman seated across from me, even when I found out he deceived me, I didn't have it in me to leave so like a fool. I stuck by him, and then I found out about you. Tears filled her eyes, and I frowned, annoyed with myself for being moved by her tears. I should have left, but I knew he would never let me go, and still, I was a fool hoping to have a good life with him. I thought a baby would change things, but to such a man, everything is a tool, and a hybrid baby would be the best tool. My mouth fell open, although I couldn't claim to be too surprised. So I left, and he gave chase. I spent 7 months running and hiding from him. I knew I couldn't give you much, but I wanted you to at least have the love I had growing up. But as you know, hybrids are not safe with witches, and well, Sylvester has no love to give. She paused to wipe her eyes. I couldn't give you a coven or a family, so a pack was the next best thing. Red Lake was far enough from him, and Alpha Howard seemed like a good man, so I left you in his care. And you returned to Hawk, I mumbled. I returned to Hawk. She nodded. He thinks I had a stillbirth son, but I know he suspects I lied, so I stayed, because if I left, he may have dug deeper, and my lie would unravel. I never wanted him to find you. I left you far, far away from him so you could have a chance at a normal life. You are saying you abandoned me to protect me? I asked, and she bowed again. You have every right not to believe me. I never thought you would find your way to the capital and that you would be involved with the king. I had hoped you would find your mate in Red Lake and live a quiet life far from Sylvester, but, well, you are here. She shook her head. May I ask if you had a good time in Red Lake, or was leaving you behind also a mistake? She twiddled her thumb as she asked, Is that the question you wanted to ask? All while she spoke, a certain numbness spread over me. No, but I would like to know. I only promised to answer one question. I see. She nodded in understanding. I want to know how did you recognize me? It was not a question I could answer, as she was not a woman I could trust. It was my biggest secret, and if it fell into Hawk's ears, it would be a disaster. I had a good time in Red Lake. I lied for her benefit. But that's not the question I want you to answer. She frowned. It was a wonderful experience to be a part of a small, tight-knit pack, I continued, and she sighed, her shoulders lagging. You don't want to tell me. I continued to lie about having a wonderful time in Red Lake, pretending I didn't hear her question. There's one thing you should know, though, I added after a long, fraudulent speech trying to sell Red Lake as the best pack in the world. Killian and I are true mates. If he dies, so will I. If she wanted to eradicate my mate, she should know she would also be doing away with the daughter she claimed to be protecting. I never. I am sure you made that poison knowing who Hawk would target. I cut her off. She bowed yet again. Even if you say you became Hawk's puppet to ensure he never went looking for me, I can't believe you since you are helping him against my mate. Hurting Killian is the same as hurting me. Then can you break up? The cup in my hand almost crashed to the ground as I let it go, surprised at her question. It floated down to the table as I gaped at Victoria. Break up? Yes. She jutted out her chin. Break up? You want me to break up with my true mate? I sneered. What little compassion I had earlier vanished into thin air. Are you hoping Scarlet would have a chance if we break up? Aside from the fact that it is impossible for true mates to break up, you should know that he loathes the air that girl breathes. As expected, I could not trust such a woman. Did she cook up such a sob story for abandoning me? She was obviously one of Hawk's henchmen. I don't care about that rude child. You are the one I care about, and I am afraid. Being here with this man is dangerous for you. You don't know Sylvester. He would do anything to get what he wants. Anyone who stands in his way would get trampled. And this man you call your mate, is in his way." Her eyes sparkled as she spoke, desperation leaking into her words as she clenched her hands together. "You will be at risk if you stick with such a man. You want me to abandon my mate because you are scared?" Incredulity made my brows furrow. "It may be easy for you to abandon people you cherish because of fear, but I'm not like that. I will die with Killian if I have to," I declared with a glare. You, how can you say such a thing? You have to live," she hissed at me. "You have to live, and you cannot live if you choose a man Sylvester has marked off. You were almost poisoned the other day." "And who was it that made the poison?" Frost clung to my words. "You've been doing all sorts of evil behind the scene, joining hands with a man you claim is despicable and evil. If I take a guess, I would say you are still stupid enough to love him." She paled. "You've just been using me as an excuse to remain at his side. You even used forbidden magic for him. Tell me, do you think there's a chance of him loving you after years of him using you as a tool?" I almost screamed at her, feeling my chest tighten with frustration. "No. I never wanted him to find you, and he would not need another tool. As long as I am by his side, he wouldn't need to target you. She rambled, clutching the collar of her dress. "You made the poison that almost killed your daughter thinking it would be used on her mate, didn't you?" Her eyes widened. "You made that poison and I almost died. It was all because of you." I pointed an accusing finger at you. "Would you have felt even a bit of remorse if Killian took that poison and died? No, of course, you don't care about anything but your unrequited love." "I care about you. If you care about me, then you would stop working with a man trying to kill me and my mate," I screamed. "He's dangerous. If I don't comply. If you don't comply, he would target me? Well, he is targeting me already, Mother." I continued to shout. "No, he is targeting the Alpha King, so if you just break up." She trailed off, losing confidence in her baseless logic. I just want to protect you." She frowned. "How can I protect you if you willingly stay in a place filled with vipers?" "All my life, I protected myself, but then I met Killian. He is the first person to ever care about me. You? Didn't you say you had a nice time at Red Lake?" She frowned. "What do you mean he is the first person to care about you?" I avoided her gaze as she peered at me, her eyes burning a hole into my face. "Just forgot I said that. I never thought my first proper conversation with my mother would end in a screaming match. And you don't have to protect me anymore. Killian does a good enough job." Her expression turned pained. "Maybe live for yourself rather than sticking to Hawk because you think it is the only way to protect me." I suspected the reason she still worked with that bastard had nothing to do with me, but I didn't mention that fact again. "It's even best if you abandon him and join your daughter's side," I added. "My daughter's side." Spring seemed to bloom on her face as she muttered to herself. "I will give serious consideration to what you have said." She spoke in earnest, her face set. "It's best you do. We only just met. It would be a shame if we became enemies." She nodded. "You? You grew into a fine woman," she repeated her earlier compliment. I know I have no right to be, but I am proud." Then she shed more tears. "Oh, yes." Not knowing what to say, I nodded, feeling my cheeks warm. A burden lifted off my shoulders as we both avoided eye contact. I met my mother after so many years of yearning. I may not trust her, but having this conversation with her cleared some of the bitterness in my heart. I wanted to believe her words that everything she did was for me. Even if it wasn't everything, at least some of the things she did were for me. "Can I ask a question?" I was about to ruin the beautiful mood, but I had to get everything off my chest once and for all. "Yes, you can ask me anything." She nodded eagerly. "Do you have any idea what happened to Prince Seth?" She paled and I had my answer, knowing he died of poison from Hawk's vineyard. The minute that bottle of poison disappeared from my table, I started to suspect my mother. A poison that left no traces behind, it was a perfect weapon for treason. She started with her face ashen. "You don't have to make any excuse," I muttered. drained of all the happiness I managed to conjure from earlier. The only thing I need you to do is make things right. If my mother really had a hand in killing Seth, how would Killian react? He said he would continue to love me no matter what, but wouldn't it put a strain on our relationship? Make things right? I nodded at her question. Why you joined hands to work with Hawk is irrelevant when one thinks of the fact that you had a hand in the Alpha Prince's death. She flinched. And now we have another case of attempted treason. She pressed her lips together, but she nodded. So far you have become a criminal who must repent. Annie, you want me to confess? Her eyes widened. Confess? No, not yet. If she confessed, she would be hung without trial, but Hawk may continue to walk free. If you confess, you may end up being the sole culprit of the crime. Then how do I repent? I need you to make that poison again. Her eyes widened. Seth's death was ruled a suicide, so that confession, it's between you and Killian. He would never forgive her, but for what happened last week, we need evidence to convict the real criminal. I just told her that continuing to work with Hawk was entirely her decision, but life was not so simple. I could not trust her judgment, so I would push her to act. For the attempted assassination of the Luna Queen, you will be a witness along with that devilish bottle of poison. Okay. I didn't expect her to agree so easily, but I would not complain. As I escorted her out of the office, she turned to me with a bitter smile. I never thought we would cross paths in this lifetime. I am sorry for everything. It was an apology I didn't even know I needed, but it made my steps light. You are hiding something, Killian said to me that night. He returned early today of all days, a day when I wanted to think more than I wanted to talk. What am I hiding? I pretended to not understand what he meant. How would I know? You are even refusing to look at me. His words sounded like a whine, but I kept my lips sealed. Amethyst. That tone that sounded both displeased and impatient did me over. I have been thinking of your brother. Because the name Seth was almost taboo in this palace, he never said anything, but I could see the way he clammed up whenever the late prince was mentioned in passing. Why, all of a sudden? I continued to avoid his gaze. Will you tell me what he was like? Yes, but first, tell me why you want to know, he pressed. I want to know everything about you, the half-truth spilt from my lips. I understand if you don't want to talk about him. No, of course, I want to talk about Seth. It just gets a bit difficult, he admitted, brushing my hair away from my face. Does thinking of him hurt? He nodded without a word. It's common knowledge that while I was the Dark Prince, Seth was the good and fair prince. He couldn't even tell a lie to save himself. He was that upright. The same Prince Seth who cheated on his fiancée with a maid? Did Killian only have good and exalted memories of his brother? He stretched out his legs by laying his head on my lap. When he looked up at me, his red eyes appeared choked with emotions. He was the first person to show me what it meant to love, the only one in this palace to consider me a person and not simply the bastard as I was called. He grinned despite his gaze hardening. He loved music and had a sweet tooth. Seth was the kind of person to find light even in darkness. He smiled often and advocated for equality with the loudest voice. He was simple. He maintained his smile despite it turning bitter. He was, in his words, a free spirit, the kind of person who gets excited over something as simple as a flower in bloom. Seth was good and kind even to those who obviously wished him ill, like Scarlet. His smile dimmed. One time, I asked why he kept his engagement with Scarlet, and he replied that he simply wished to help her achieve her dream of becoming the Luna Queen, and his mother would be sad if he broke off his engagement with her since she loved her. He pursed his lips. What a stupid reason. He shook his head. Although he was soft-hearted and soft-spoken, he would never back down from what he believed. He was that kind of person. As if a dam had broken free, he continued to give detailed descriptions of his brother, and I listened with a heavy heart. Even into midnight, he spoke of their adventures together, the good deeds he had done, and who they benefited, the time he came to visit him in the military camp, and how all the warriors sang his praises. It was clear that to Killian, his brother was a hero, an idol. He spoke his name with reverence. Sometimes he smiled in reverence, and other times he wore a melancholic smile that made my heavy heart ache. Seth meant the world to him, but for Hawk and Scarlet, he was just a person standing between them and their goal. He would have made Scarlet his queen, even though she was the reincarnation of evil, simply because he wanted to make two women happy. A pure-hearted person like that lost his life, and for what? He never wanted to be king. My hands paused their ministration in his hair when he uttered that taboo. For the Alpha Prince to not want to take over after his father's reign, it was akin to rejecting a divine duty. No, it was the definition of rejecting a divine duty. Why? I spoke after a long time of listening to Killian reminiscing about his brother. Did I mention he was a free spirit? He closed his eyes for a minute. The protocols for royalty are endless and cumbersome. I did not have to live with any, as no one regarded me as a real prince, but he did. To make sure he was presented in a good light, almost like my foil, Cordelia made sure he followed even the most archaic of etiquettes. She forced him to be the perfect son, so when anyone met him, they had no choice but to praise his superior demeanor. He laughed. It put a strain on him, but for her, he endured it. She would cry if he ever made even a small mistake, and who wants to watch their mother cry? Have you ever imagined such a shameless mother? He spat. He hated everything about the monarchy and used to joke about running away and changing his name to Samuel. That's why when I heard he took his life, I believed. He covered his face with his palm. He was not the type to do that, and I suspected something off, but he hated this palace so much that I believed the lies they told about him. I froze when he removed his hand from his face, and a lone tear slid down the side of his face. He couldn't even be buried with his ancestors. His death, they called it a taboo, so he was buried far from the other royals like a sinner. They killed him and called him a sinner, and I believed them? What sort of brother does that make me? The tears fell in earnest that night. I had never seen my mate cry. I had never even imagined him crying, but he sobbed that night, repeatedly crying out his brother's name like a drunk man. No matter what words of comfort I offered, I felt like a sinner, like a part of the people that took away such a precious person from his life. I hugged him as he fell asleep, but I could not sleep that night. I thought of my mother, who claimed to have followed Hawk in her naivety, thinking of protecting me. Whether I liked it or not, she was an accomplice in the prince's death. It brought a question to mind. Would he kill her? I didn't care about Hawk, but my mother, no matter how much I tried to harden my heart, she still had a soft spot in my heart. For the crime of treason, death would not be too harsh a punishment for her, but could I bid her farewell like that? Could I watch my mate sentence her to the guillotine? What could I even do? Her actions hurt him beyond words, so why should I think of him forgiving her? Shouldn't I be thinking of helping my mate avenge a loved one? I fell asleep with a tumultuous mind, and I dreamt of a fair-haired man who looked just like Killian, laughing with a sparkle in his eyes. But suddenly my mother appeared beside me and he started to cough up blood. I woke up feeling like an accomplice in a murder case. As early as 6 a.m. that morning, we had a guest. She was dressed in disguise, but there was no hiding her imposing air. I greet your majesties, the Alpha King and his Luna. Cordelia gave a stiff bow. If you are here to plead for the Elias family— No, I have come regarding the plot to assassinate the king, she said stiffly. Killian and I shared a look. Assassination? I broke the silence, followed by a yawn. Who wants to assassinate him now? You know who. She gritted her teeth. No, actually, I don't know, Killian answered. I have a lot of enemies, so when you speak of assassination, many people come to mind. However, I don't think any of them would want to anger the goddess by killing a monarch she ordained herself. If you have 10 enemies, then you should be 10 times more afraid, since they are all coming for your head, she sighed. I am serious. This is serious. Why are you telling us this? I thought you would be the happiest if I died, Killian said, and she glared at him. You, who would be happy if you died? Why should I be happy? She snapped. Have you forgotten I raised you? You are an arrogant and ungrateful bastard, but who wants you dead? Do you think I want all the effort I spent in choosing your teachers and making sure you did not go naked or starve to death to go to waste? Huh? She looked about, ready to hit him, her eyes blazing the red of her wolf. And Seth, do you want my son to refuse my embrace in the afterlife because I watched you die without saying anything? Didn't you think I killed him? Killian's jaw dropped at her yelling. You? She snorted. You worshipped the ground he walked on. How could you kill him? We watched in silence as she gave a forced laugh and then let out a sob. Seth, my good boy, I knew he was not happy, but what did I do? I kept pushing him, and in the end, he decided he had enough. She wiped the corner of her eyes. If anyone killed him, I did. I pushed him to his death. He didn't do it, though, I muttered, watching as the proud woman turned to the side to wipe the corners of her red eyes. What? She muttered, her eyes cutting to me. You never knew him. I never met Alpha Prince Seth, but it's a disservice to his name for everyone to think he killed himself to avoid his duties despite him dedicating his life to this kingdom. She blinked at me and then turned to Killian before her eyes came back to me. What are you saying? The evidence? Everyone knows. The public believes it was a strange disease, but you must know. Her eyes cut to Killian again, but he avoided her gaze. What am I missing? What are you saying? For the first time, my heart went out to this wicked woman. She looked truly devastated. Despite knowing what I was driving at, she refused to think of the possibility. Should I tell her, or was it best for her to continue believing the lie she already accepted? Have you ever paused to think of how brazen a man must be to think of assassinating the Alpha King, a man chosen and blessed by the goddess herself? She bit her lips as I spoke, her eyes becoming unfocused for a second. Desperation. Hawk is... Do you think Hawk started aiming for the throne yesterday? She paled. Or last week? These plans take months, years, decades even, and for a man like Hawk, if one person is sacrificed, so be it, whether they are the Alpha Prince or not. What are you saying? What is all this roundabout talk? I am saying you should think of your son's death as murder. She screamed and I flinched, leaning into my mate. Killian, what does she mean? Seth was... She pulled the pins holding her hair up. What is she saying? What do you know about your brother's death? She demanded. He was murdered, Killian said, and she screamed again. Water, I need water. I called for Ella, and she hastily brought water for the distraught woman. Why? How is it? Tears glazed her eyes. It may not be a good idea to tell a mother that she had been drinking and breaking bread with the people that murdered her son. It may be better to spare her the grief, to allow her continue living a lie, but there was no going back now. To me, whether she cried or hit her head on the floor, she had to know what happened to her son, else she would continue hurting him even in death. You should have told me, she choked out. I have been with Hawk. We sat together. His daughter, she consoled me, but to think, how? Why would you hide such a thing? She held her head in both her palms and let out a loud wail. Would you have believed me? Killian asked as she raised wild eyes to look at him. If I told you the man who you are in cohorts with killed your son, wouldn't you have said I was trying to pass off the blame for my evil deeds? No, she let out an awful, choked sound. How could I never blamed you? Why? Why? You never blamed me, but you made the world blame me. Killian's tone remained cold as he stared at the woman going crazy in front of us. You say you never blamed or suspected me, but when the rumor started that I killed my brother, you did nothing about it. Rumors that started from your palace. When your workers were rubbing my name in the mud, you heard them, but you never corrected them. It's because... She trailed off without good reason, and Killian laughed. Yes, it's because you hate me. As if I was the one to seduce your husband. As if it was my fault that your mate could not keep it in his pants. He laughed again, the sound cold and cruel. It made my heart hurt. You poured out your anger and hatred on me for something that I had no hand in. So, when you heard people calling me a murderer, you said nothing because even if you didn't believe I killed him, you did not see a reason to clear my name either. No, that's not what happened. She shook her head, her voice weak. You believed you pushed him to suicide while trying to make sure the world saw him as my better, so I am sure you hated me even more after his death. After all, if I never existed, you would have never had to push him so hard. You would have had no reason to force him to compete with anyone. You made me the catalyst of all the problems in the palace. The bastard. Stop, she shouted. Stop it! Stop it! She pushed her fingers into her ears, and Killian smiled. Why should I stop it? Why should I allow you to hide from your sins? He spat. Killian. I tugged at his wrist and flinched when he turned to me with hard eyes filled with malice. I'm sorry, he muttered, raking a hand through his hair as he turned to Cordelia. You made me show my mate something unpleasant this early in the day. That's not what happened. She poured herself a cup of water, the cup overflowing before she stopped pouring. We all sat in silence as she drank noisily. The silence continued as she smoothed down her dress. I took Killian's hand beside me when his teeth gnashing got loud. He squeezed my hand so hard it hurt. How do you know? Cordelia broke the silence in a small voice. About Seth, that is. She refused to look at Killian, so she fixed her gaze on me. I turned to Killian and he pursed his lips. He was fuming. His lips sealed, so I turned back to Cordelia. Is that relevant? She blinked at my question. Of course it is, she snapped, bewildered. We cannot tell you how we know. I'd be a fool to tell her about my dreams. She opened her mouth to speak, her brows furrowed, but I cut her off. We don't care if you believe us or not. She shut her mouth. You may think we lied for whatever reason, but we have no interest in persuading you to believe us. We've done our part, so if you wish, you can continue working with the man who killed your son, or believe he killed himself. In the end, what you believe is none of our concern. You are a good match, she gave a humorless laugh. Two heartless people. Thank you, Killian replied in a voice dripping with sarcasm. If Hawk really killed Seth, she trailed off with a faraway look in her eyes. Then I failed my son both when he was alive and after he died. She pursed her lips, letting her tears fall freely. And Hawk, her gaze hardened, for him to do that to me and still comfort me, I let his daughter call me mother and this. She bowed her head as her shoulders shook. He can't get away. Except you want to join your son and mate soon. I would advise against clashing with Hawk, Killian said. I am not a fool, she muttered, and Killian muttered under his breath. If you are certain he killed your brother, why is he still allowed to walk freely? She demanded. Would you like to catch him for us? He snarled. Hawk is not an easy man to convict. I cut into the conversation before Killian said more hurtful words to a grieving mother. We are working on gathering evidence against him so we can pull him down once and for all. She nodded. When you mentioned treason, I stirred the conversation back to the original. Yes, he is working with a number of alphas to discredit your lineage before he takes you down. Had it started already? He met with some priests recently. I suspect it has something to do with the first Alpha King's blessing. Yes, it had started. He wants to tell everyone that we were not blessed by the goddess. Killian laughed and she nodded. Thank you for telling us, I held Killian. We have to stop the rumors before they spread. How can I help? Cordelia asked, her gaze set with determination. To stop Hawk, we had to act fast. If priests came out to discredit Killian and his lineage, things would become more difficult to handle. Before that happened, we sent a secret message to the High Priest who would help us put in a request to see the High Priestess. Esther, Fraser's mate, came to see me the day before I had to visit the temple. She had become half her initial size, her hair and skin looked dead, and her eyes held deep sorrow. Your Majesties. She bowed when she entered Killian's office, forcing a smile that appeared more pained than courteous. What do you have for us? Killian asked, and she pulled out a stack of papers which she handed over to him. He took them with a bored expression on his face, and as he flipped through the documents, his expression remained unchanged. Esther shivered on her feet, her gaze fixed on Killian. He continued to flip through the documents with speed, but he didn't look the least bit interested in what he was reading, as if there wasn't anything important written on the papers. The more he flipped, the more Esther trembled. She opened her mouth to speak a couple of times, but didn't have the courage to say anything. When he read through the last page, Killian turned to me. Our eyes met, and I heard his thoughts. We've struck gold. I pursed my lips to manage my expression. He turned to Esther and flung the documents at her. Her quivering knees could no longer hold her up, so she fell, rushing for the documents on the floor. I turned to Killian in surprise, but he shrugged. "Is this information worth your mate's neck?" he asked in a flat tone. "Why, your Majesty." She raised a tear-stricken face. "This is the best I could do in such a short time." She wiped her face, but the tears fell faster than her hands moved. "You were given a week, but even after 10 days, it's only this nonsense you could come up with?" He growled as she hunched forward, her head pressed to the ground. Something happened. Your Majesty, please, mercy, have mercy on this poor woman who is about to become a widow. Please." "Very well," he said with a sigh. She raised her head in surprise. "Right, I am a merciful king, so I will give you more time." "Why, yes." She smiled through her tears. "Let me see that again." She hurriedly handed him the scattered documents she gathered from the ground. "This is nothing, but it should be able to save your husband from the guillotine." She breathed out a loud sigh of relief. "Don't be relieved yet. He will still spend the rest of his life in the dungeons." She paled. "And we will have to confiscate everything he owns, down to the last dime, to pay back what he owes this kingdom." "Sir?" She spoke in a horror-choked voice, already picturing life without the fancy clothes on her back. "Do not interrupt me," he growled. "As I said, I am a benevolent king, so I will give you another chance. If we can gather enough evidence to catch the real culprits, don't you think your mate will be safe? The others will pay for embezzlement, and depending on how useful your information is, your mate may walk out of the dungeons without a sentence." "Yes." She nodded, although she looked hopeless. "I will give you a month this time." Thank you very much." "No need to thank me so enthusiastically. The longer it takes you to do your work, the longer your mate suffers in the dungeons." "Why, yes." She bowed. "If you understand, you can get out." She rushed out before the words were out of his mouth. The next day, I set out in a plain carriage headed for the temple. I wiped my sweaty hands for the nth time as the carriage raced. The temple was an unfamiliar place to me. Various parts of the kingdom had priests and small temples, but I had never been to one. The first and only priest I ever met was the high priest, who was stoic with an unapproachable air around him. He confirmed our meeting time, but I feared it may have been because he could not reject a request from the king. "Welcome, Your Majesty." The priests and priestesses didn't bow to mortals, and their greetings were mere words devoid of respect. "It is a privilege to have the Luna Queen visit the Holy Temple," the high priest said as I took a seat in his office. "To what do we owe this revered visit?" He spoke the words with a dull voice that made me even more nervous. Though he was not discourteous, he was not courteous either. "You must have received my letter," I responded, and he nodded. "Indeed, I received a letter with the Alpha King's stamp, but I am not sure I understand." "I would like to meet with the Oracle." The man's eyebrow twitched. "Pardon me, Your Majesty, but that would be impossible." He looked me dead in the eye. "The High Priestess is not a being that one can meet at will. She is the highest authority here, and the people she meets with are the people she calls into her inner chambers." There was a reason no one had seen the High Priestess in many years, the reason being she did not come out and she did not call for anyone, but with the authority of the Alpha King, wouldn't it be possible to schedule a meeting? As the Luna Queen, even as the Luna Queen, the High Priestess, as I said, is the highest authority in this place, so you cannot dictate to her. I froze. "Do you mean the High Priestess authority supersedes that of the Alpha King?" I growled, but he only shrugged. "That is a debate I am not interested in, but in this temple, on this holy ground, the oracle who hears the unfiltered voice of the goddess is the highest authority regardless of anything." He did not back down. We heard a commotion outside, and he stood to look out the window before returning to his seat. I didn't know how to feel about the priest's words, but I wasn't entirely sure he was wrong. Everything in this kingdom answered to Killian, as the ruler chosen by the goddess. But the oracle, with her power and status as the goddess' right hand, may be a higher being than the king even on his land. There must be a way to meet the oracle, I insisted. "Yes, there is a way to meet the oracle," he said, and I brightened. "The way to meet the oracle is to wait for her summons." "Mr. High Priest," I was no longer imagining his disrespect. This man was undermining the monarchy as we spoke. "Do you or do you not believe in the monarchy?" His gray brows furrowed. How can I, a servant of the goddess, doubt the institution created by the goddess herself? No, it seems you don't believe in the monarchy. Are you not planning on telling the world that the goddess never chose Killian and his predecessors as the rulers of wolves? He pressed his lips together as he glared at me. The commotion outside grew louder, but this time he did not bother getting out of his seat to check the situation. What in the world are you talking about? He almost shouted. I, with the hands the goddess gave me, crowned his majesty as the Alpha King. If he was not to be king, I would never have put the crown on his head. If you believe in the monarchy, then how can you refuse the king's order? I raised a brow and he sighed. Your Majesty, the oracle is not someone you can meet because you want to. You cannot see the oracle. The door opened and he stopped speaking, and then what little color he had on his face drained off. I turned to see a middle-aged woman standing outside the door. I flinched when our eyes met. Her eyes were a dull brown, but looking into them made the hair on my arms stand and my heart race. Her powerful scent also overwhelmed me as she entered, shutting the door softly behind her. Hello, she said simply as our eyes met for the second time. She turned to the high priest, whose jaw remained unhinged. Please, close your mouth. You are scaring our guest. Your Holiness. The high priest regained his senses as he flew out of his seat. High Priest Silas, can I borrow your office for a while? Thank you. She sat in the seat the high priest once occupied. She's the oracle, my wolf muttered in awe. I've heard about you, the woman said. She looked around my mother's age, but in her chilling eyes shone ancient wisdom. Call me Serena. She put out a hand for a handshake, so I shook her hand, fighting down the cold that spread in my stomach. Nice to meet you, Serena, I forced myself to say. I have a favor to ask. Yes, but before we get to that, I have some questions to ask. She leaned back in her seat and crossed her arms. How are you? She asked, and I blinked in surprise. Me? I am fine, I answered a bit late. Are you certain? I nodded as she tilted her head to the side to stare at me. She was a plain woman, unlike what I expected, but something about her made me uncomfortable. Is Kalea also doing well? I froze when she mentioned my wolf, but nodded. I've never met a hybrid, so I am curious about you. Again, I flinched. The oracle was the right hand of the goddess, a person who communicated with a being as powerful and magnificent as the goddess, as if they were friends. The goddess was all-knowing, so it was not unusual for the oracle to know things hidden away, but having a strange woman who looked too normal to be normal, throwing my secret into the air like that, made me feel awkward. What did it feel like to have your powers awakened? She asked, like I was a plant, and she was a botanist studying me. Wait, you have not awakened yet. Sorry, I will ask something else. Awakened. What was this woman talking about? How did Kalea react to your hybridity? She asked, and I coughed, my eyes going to the door. What if the high priest was standing right outside the door? I did not trust that guy, so the last thing I needed was for him to discover my identity. There was no reaction, I answered honestly. I see. There have been theories that wolves may not want to cohabit with magic, but I see that's wrong. She shook her head. Have you had another dream of the future? I blinked at her, but she continued to question me. Did she not think it was weird to have such a discussion as if we had had a prior conversation? No. She sighed again. But I heard you've been sleeping more frequently. Didn't people assume you were pregnant? I assumed it was because you wanted to dream more of the future. Just how much do you know about me? She blinked at my question as if she didn't understand why I would ask something like that. Unfortunately, not enough. That's why I would like to get to know you. She spoke with a straight face, so it was hard to decipher her thoughts, which made this conversation even more awkward. I avoided her gaze and groaned, pressing the base of my palms into my eyes. When you have lived as long as I have, there is very little new to you but hybrids, people I have heard of but never encountered. That's exciting to me. But she didn't even look excited. Besides, we are the only two people that can see the future. In a sense, aren't you like me? Stop, I finally groaned. This is such an awkward conversation, and I see, I am sorry. After that, she didn't speak anymore. Did I offend you? I asked when the silence in the room stretched for over a minute. Yes, in fact, you have hurt my feelings, she said. You made me feel like a bother to you. Ha! I fought to maintain a neutral expression. How could a person be so straightforward? I came out of the inner room after a long time because I wanted to speak with you, but it seems you are only here to ask something of me, and I cannot have a simple conversation before that. Why did the oracle speak as if I came all the way here to use her without considering her feelings? Did I do that? Kalea snorted as I panicked. No, it's not like that. It is how you have made me feel, she said in her apathetic tone with her face straight. Then, I am sorry, I apologized. I just feel a bit awkward that you know so many things about me even though this is our first meeting. I only know little things like your conception date, your hybridity, and your dreams. The goddess shared these with me because of your hybridity. You know that witches and wolves do not mix, so I have always been curious about this forbidden mix. She continued to talk, and I continued to school my expression to avoid offending her. How could she speak of my conception with such a bland expression? As someone who our benevolent goddess tells the future ever so often, I feel I have something in common with you, who can dream the future. It's rare for the oracle to have anything in common with others. That is why I rushed here when I heard you arrived at the temple, she continued without blinking. Are you lonely? I asked. Of course, how can the oracle not be lonely? The only companion I have is the goddess, who is much too busy for a mere mortal like me. She shrugged and I nodded, pretending to understand. Most people are like you. They only have a favor to ask of me, so I cannot converse with them. The priests and priestesses look at me in envy, wondering if they can ever get the goddess's favor to become the oracle after me. How do you expect me not to be lonely? So do you want us to be friends? I asked, and she shook her head. How can we be friends? She asked, and I winced. We have something in common? I felt my skin flush. Yeah, you have a point. Her expression changed for the first time since she entered the office. Her brows furrowed a fraction. Is that enough ground for friendship? She asked, her expression straightening out again. Yes, of course, I rushed to say, tired of the awkward conversation. Very well, we are friends now. And just like that, I became friends with the oracle. Then, Amethyst, my friend, why did you come? I had expected the person who knew my conception date to know why I visited. There is a plot to assassinate the Alpha King, my mate, she nodded. Alpha Hawk, a big shot alpha, is going to tell everyone that his lineage received nothing like the goddess' blessing. Who would believe that? She blinked. All children born from the first Alpha King have been alphas despite their mother's status, and their eyes are forever the color of their wolves. Yes, exactly. I agreed with that. Everyone knows that, but Hawk is spreading a rumor. What does it matter if he spreads a false rumor? No one will believe such blatant lies. They would. I insisted, but she shook her head. Only a fool would believe that. How do I explain to her that, over time, people can believe rumors to be true, no matter how ridiculous the rumor is? A rumor was just a rumor until more and more people fell for it, then it would no longer be a rumor, but the truth. To convince her, I told her of the rumor about me being barren and how people reacted despite it being false, but she refused to listen. You are a hybrid. Of course, it will take a long time for you to conceive with a wolf. I blinked in horror, but she continued. People believed that rumor because they did not know the truth. This time around, everyone knows the truth, so no one would believe. The problem was me after all. I touched my belly. No baby, all because I was a hybrid? I shook my head, forcing myself to concentrate on the present. It had to be like my shift. Just because I shifted late didn't mean I was not a wolf, so because I may not have a baby early did not mean I was barren. My fists clenched at my side. In my dream, it worked, I told the oracle. Her brows drew in. You may not know this, but Killian died in my dream, and Hawk made the kingdom believe there was never a blessed monarch, so everyone supported his regicide. Are you sure? She knew I dreamt of the future, but it seemed she did not know the details of the dream. Yes, I nodded. That's why I came to speak to you. Did you know that right now, some priests working with Hawk have started to spread the rumors? No, I have no part in the inner workings of the temple. That is the high priest's duty. Shall I speak to him? I shook my head. People wholeheartedly believe the words of priests, but your words far outweigh theirs. You want me to confirm the goddess' blessing for the public? I nodded. Her brows furrowed for a second before she nodded. I have a better suggestion. He knows something. Victoria wrung her hands together as she stared at me with eyes shining with guilt. Did you say anything to him? I snarled. She took a step back, hurt flashing in her eyes. Is there any reason to be a rude child? Killian asked with annoyance in her voice. She promised not to say anything, so why blame her? No, why would I say anything to him? Victoria furrowed her brows. He caught me making the poison and then, out of the blue, he said, "Why have you never visited your son's grave?" in a calm tone. She bowed her head, but not before I saw the panic in her eyes. He has never, not once, asked about our presumed dead son, so why? She trailed off. She was scared, and I was too. I got the answer to the question that night. It was Scarlet. Father, I just heard a funny conversation between Amethyst and that strange woman you brought with you. It seems they are related. Then she proceeded to tell him about the conversation she overheard while I and my mother screamed at each other the other day. You are such a fool, Amethyst. I laughed to myself. Then I covered my face with my hands as I let out a choked sob. My days went like this. I slept less than I used to, giving up on dreaming of the future. Eliza and I worked quietly in my office to replace the staff in the palace. So far, we had replaced at least half of the workers here. Jack lounged around me, complaining of boredom, and Killian and I had breakfast together as usual while he returned to the room less and less. Every day, I felt restless, thinking of Hawk, whose eyes now followed me whenever we crossed paths, which thankfully happened little. Then one day it happened. You have my mother's jaw, he said to me as we passed each other on the stairs. I lost my footing as horror swarmed me. He caught me before I tumbled to the ground, and when our eyes met, his lit up. As I suspected, it's you. I wrenched myself out of his embrace, not caring whether or not I tumbled down the stairs. Excuse me, I don't understand what you mean. I glared at him, but he smiled. Yes, it would be hard for a child who grew up without her parents to understand things. His smile remained as he walked away. My heart pounded in my ears as I walked out of the main palace. Why? Why did he have to figure it out? A secret so carefully hidden for decades. Why did he have to find out just like that? Dazed, I continued to walk until the path became difficult to follow. I blinked when I realized I had walked into the forest beside the palace. Shaking my head, I pulled off my clothes, and then I shifted. Freedom! Killian shouted, lifting her head up in a howl, but I could not even laugh at her antics. Isn't the grass splendid? She chattered nonstop to distract me, but my wolf was originally the quiet kind, so she could not keep up the chatter for long. It will be okay, she assured me as she traipsed through the woods. He can't hurt you. Remember, we have Killian. Yes, Killian. I just had to trust my mate. He would fix everything. He was the alpha king, after all. Telling myself that did not work. Only Killian believed in Killian's omnipotence. I knew what a formidable foe Hawk was to deal with. The bushes in front of me rustled, and I lifted my head, watching as a shadow ran past. I froze, chills running down my spine. Killian sniffed the air, and her snout twitched. That's an awful smell, she said. Let's go back, I said to my wolf, but she shook her head. No, I cannot let a stranger wander around our woods like this. She followed the smell. Killian, you are an Omega, I reminded my wolf. An Omega with 0 combat skills. The only reason she could be considered an average fighter was because of the strength we got from mating with someone as powerful and skilled in combat as Killian was. I am not comfortable tracking an intruder like this. She continued to follow the scent despite my protests. This forest belongs to the king's pack, so nothing dangerous can enter. Killian, I muttered, the awful feeling in my guts doubling. Turn back. I tried to shift back, but she resisted. Killian, are you possessed? I screamed at my wolf. Shift back right now. Why? You never let me come out to play, but because of a foreign scent, you want me to shift back after less than 20 minutes? She hissed at me, venom in her words. Venom. But it's dangerous. Dangerous? Do you think we would encounter a rogue here of all places? She asked. There are no rogues. She paused, and I flinched. In the capital. Eyes darker than the night stared at me with a burning hatred. Jaws unhinged and saliva pooling on the ground. I took a step back, and the rogues mirrored my movements. Rogues. There were 3 of them, and they all had death in their eyes. How can? My wolf panicked. I panicked along with her. The battle against rogues lasted a few years, and with it came a decrease in rogue sightings in the kingdom. I had never seen a rogue in my life, and now I was staring at 3, and they looked at me with death in their eyes. If they did not rip me apart, then the awful choking smell on them would suffocate me. What happened next was a blur. They leapt at me at top speed. Having no way to win against 3 crazed wolves, I turned and fled. Rogues were said to be stupid in combat. They had no fighting sense, but what they lacked in finesse, they made up for in agility and a brutal hunger for blood. "Don't turn! Don't turn!" I muttered to myself as I raced out of the woods. I knew better than to look back, but I felt them on my tail, their awful scent choking me, and their breath almost on my skin. Against my better judgment, I turned back to gauge the distance between us, and then I screamed as my left hind leg gave out. That was the end. I was sure of it. I readied myself for a fight to the death with these monsters, but then I heard a spray of loud, violent cursing. I gave up my life to guard this little fucker who still goes around without me. Jack cursed as she shifted at the same time as she went at the rogues. I moved away right in time as one of the rogues swiped at me. Jack's wolf seemed to be cursing as she quickly took down the first rogue and turned to the second while I dodged the quick and persistent attacks of the third. Then she finished the second as quickly as she did the first and took the third off me. That was when the warriors supposed to guard this forest rushed forward. Ella handed me a glass of milk as I rocked myself back and forth. Killian was out with Jack to hear what happened since I could not get myself to speak. How in the world did something as simple as running in a guarded forest become so dangerous for me? While I forced myself to put milk into my knotted stomach, my door banged open, and in came Hawk and Victoria. Hawk looked murderous, and Victoria, she had guilt shining in her eyes. "What happened?" Hawk asked, and Killian too barged in. "Alpha Hawk, who are you to barge into our chambers like this?" He came in with Jack and Orion, who looked as surprised as I did. "Who am I?" Hawk glared at him, puffing out his chest. "Do you ask because you do not know, or are you also among the people that want to keep me from my own child?" he exclaimed, breathing harshly. Everyone's jaws dropped while I closed my eyes in horror. "My daughter almost died, so someone better starts talking. What happened?" he exclaimed. "Daughter? What daughter? Who here is your daughter?" "Dear daughter?" Jack broke the silence with an incredulous stare at Hawk. "Are you trying to claim the Luna Queen as your child?" Ella shuffled with unease behind me. "Hawk," Killian finally spoke, "stop saying distasteful things." "How can you be so shameless, Your Majesty?" I could not see Hawk's expression since he turned his back to me, but I heard mockery in his words. Was this bastard laughing right now? "Even if you do not respect me as the alpha of one of the pillars of this kingdom, you must respect me as your father-in-law." Jack sucked in a sharp breath. "How can you even think of denying me the rights to my daughter?" No, I wasn't imagining it. There was laughter in his tone. He knew Killian refused Scarlet so vehemently because he refused to be related to him in any way, but now it seemed bad karma had come to bite my mate. "Alpha Hawk," Killian growled, "is it not time for you to call me father yet?" The temperature dropped as Killian's eyes darkened. Excuse me," Ella bowed as she escaped the room. We better leave you guys to discuss." Orion pulled an unwilling Jack with him and closed the door with a bang. I looked at Victoria, who stood at the corner as if she wanted to disappear. She raised her head for a split second before turning away. "Alpha Hawk," Killian started. "Is there still a need to?" "Would you like me to rip out your tongue?" Killian growled, and Hawk promptly sealed his mouth. "I don't know the meaning of this useless drama you have come to act out, but I do not find it funny. Stop it." "Your Majesty," Hawk started in a serious tone. "Will you pretend not to know that I am Amethyst's father?" In a flash, Killian had him by his collar. Victoria choked out something. "That's Her Majesty the Luna Queen to you," he growled, pulling him off the ground so they were at eye level. Hawk let himself be manhandled like that, and then he laughed. "Why are you so pissed, Your Majesty?" he asked. "Did you want my daughter to never find her family?" Killian let him go and landed a punch on his jaw. Hawk staggered, but he raised his head and laughed again. This time, not a trace of mirth lingered in the sound. You may be the king, but I am an alpha. I will like to ask your majesty not to keep insulting me like this. He straightened his back and then turned to me. His eyes were cold, but he smiled at me. I am a father who just found out about his daughter, so please, bear with me. He mentioned daughter too many times, to the point where it was clear he only used that word to aggravate Killian. Killian, I called my mate, who looked on a verge of a shift. Please. I held out a hand to me, and he came to my side in the blink of an eye. Ah, excuse me. I came to ask how you are faring, but I may have unintentionally caused a scene. I am sorry. He spoke without a trace of sincerity in his words. Alpha Hawk, can you leave? I asked the annoying man about to take a seat. I am afraid I cannot, he smirked, and Killian growled. Leave. The Alpha command resonated in the room, and Hawk flinched. We watched him struggle for a bit, but in the end, every wolf under the Alpha King had to obey his command, so he got out of the seat he just settled in and left the room. Killian's gaze cut to Victoria, and she scurried after her lover. After they left, Killian gritted his teeth, then he let out a deep sigh to expel his anger. How are you? He asked that question at least 10 times since Jack dragged me back to the mansion, cursing as we went. I am fine, a bit shaken, but I am fine, I answered. I never imagined meeting a rogue and like that too. The Alpha King's dwelling was supposed to be the most secure place in the kingdom. There were warriors on patrol all the time and many people going and coming every day, including the workers. So how did rogues enter the forest right next to the main palace with no one noticing? For one thing, the forest was fenced and not connected to any other, so it was not possible to assume they wandered in from an unguarded adjoining forest. I am sorry, Killian muttered. I vowed to protect you, but I keep failing. It's not your fault I wandered into the forest without an escort, I said, but he shook his head. Your home should be safe for you. You should not have to move around with an escort or a guard or whatever. He tapped his feet. It's strange that rogues entered the capital and even found their way into the palace. He leaned forward and buried his face in my neck, taking a big whiff of my scent to calm himself. I can't. Imagining if Jack had not been out looking for you, if she had arrived a minute later. He let out a deep breath. I am going crazy. Sticks. He trailed off with a growl and another deep breath. I cannot lose you, Amethyst. He pushed his head deeper into my neck. I am not going anywhere, I reassured him, hiding my rattled nerves. My hands trembled as I raised them to stroke his hair. For a minute there, my life flashed before my eyes, and I thought of Killian and the wonderful future we would never get to experience together. At the point of death, I felt sorry for my mate. If those rogues ripped out my throat, then Killian, he would have gone mad. We stayed glued together for a long time, hugging each other in silence. Killian broke the hug as he stepped away. My wolf grumbled at the loss of contact, but she was awfully silent, barely even moving since we returned home. Let's get rid of everything and live happily together, I muttered when I saw my mate's red eyes. Yes, I will work harder, he vowed, and I gave a small smile. He got into bed with me, and we fell asleep shortly after that. I dreamt of a crying Scarlet, and then I had to wake up for dinner. About Hawk, I muttered as we ate in silence. He found out about me. He already figured out that much, so he nodded. What should we do? I asked. We don't have to do anything. He will try to get you to recognize him. He may even go ahead and announce to the world that you are his daughter to increase his influence, but you shouldn't meet with him. Ignore him. If he steps out of line, I'll handle him. I nodded in response. The next day, the whole capital, especially the palace, was thrown into chaos by the sudden visit of the high priestess, popularly called the Oracle. I was working in Killian's office when I got the news of her sudden arrival at the palace. Scrambling out of the Emerald Annex, I arrived just as she emerged from her carriage. She looked around the place, and when her eyes met mine, she tilted her head to the side. You are not hurt, are you? She asked, ignoring the hasty greetings of staff running out to meet her. No, I am unscratched thanks to my diligent guard. I motioned to Jack, who followed me more closely now. Your Holiness, she gave an awkward bow. You are that warrior that curses even the priests, Serena said, and Jack nodded like an excited puppy. Yes, yes, you have heard of me, Jack exclaimed. Of course, the goddess has told me about the Bale warrior that cusses in her name. Jack paused. Anyway, thank you for saving my friend. Friend? Murmuring broke out around us, but Serena turned her sharp gaze to me. Will I not be invited inside? I hurriedly guided her inside. She looked around as we went and gave a single bland compliment for the palace's decoration. I told her about the incident. She knew I was attacked, but she did not know the details. As I recounted the chilling experience of being hunted by rogues, she kept her gaze on me, barely blinking, and then she said, "It seems you are in more danger than I first imagined." Yes, it seems so, I answered with a tight smile. But you have the oracle on your side, so it should be fine. Shall I curse those who sent rogues after you? She asked, and I blinked. Unfortunately, I could not get the oracle to curse Hawk, as curses often last until the third generation, which meant that if she cursed him, myself and my kids would also be cursed. It was truly unfortunate. How did the issue with the priests go? I asked as Ella poured tea. It is all good. Cleaning up the corruption, infiltrating the holy temple gave me something to do. They have started a fast that will last until they are free of sin. Just a fast? How long will it take them to be free of sin? I asked, and she blinked. All their lives, of course. Who in this world is free of sin? She asked, and I recoiled. A fast for life? Didn't people call that starving to death? From tomorrow, we can proceed with your plan to restore faith in the king's blessing. I will be going on a tour of the kingdom to spread the word. You would do all that for us? I asked, my heart warm. We are friends, so I can do that much. She gave a tiny shrug. Also, I will be spreading the goddess' message of love to her people, so it is not all about you. Even after she left, the palace still buzzed with excitement. The oracle that lived in her inner chambers without coming out had visited the palace in person. It was a good thing for Killian's unstable reign, so I was eternally grateful to the oracle. After Serena left, I had the displeasure of meeting with Bella. Send her away, I told Ella, who brought news of an uninvited guest named Bella. The last thing I needed was provocation from my longtime nemesis. Please, please, Carrot! Your Majesty, I heard her screaming from outside. Please, please, I just want to say a few words. Please, let me, please, it's urgent. I peeked out of the window to see her being dragged away, but she fought and persisted, even biting a warrior's hand to get free. What did this bitch want now? Against my better judgment, I asked Ella to send her in. She came in huffing and puffing, her clothes wrinkled and her hair a mess. I greet your Majesty the Luna Queen. She bowed. My, had I ever seen her so respectful before? Tempted to leave her bowing like that, I kept silent for a long time until she began to tremble. Rise, she lifted her head. Why did you want to see me? I came to apologize, she said, avoiding my gaze. I caused you trouble for no reason. On Friday, I will be returning to the pack, and I knew I had to apologize before leaving. Are you leaving alone? I asked, and she nodded, avoiding my gaze. The Luna has decided to remain in Dark Moon Pack indefinitely. What exactly was Luna Grace planning? Why did she leave her mate to cling to another man? You made a ruckus in front of my home because of this? I asked, feeling annoyance bloom in my chest. Bella should know I did not want to see her. If she wanted forgiveness, she should know that forcing herself into the palace would not make me forgive her. In fact, it only made me detest her the more. I want to find Noah. She bowed her head. If it is possible. I shook my head to cut her off. I don't know where he is. His body was tossed somewhere that even my mate does not know, so you can stop asking me now, she nodded. Yes, I am sorry, she murmured. What exactly are you sorry for? For bullying me? For laughing in my face as I lost my mate? Or was it for the countless times she hit me? For joining Noah in torturing me every night? There was a long list of things she could be apologizing for. For everything, she muttered. I was the one who told Luna Grace of your relationship with Noah, and I followed her here to ruin your peace. Even for the time with Noah. She trailed off. If it makes you feel better, it was one of the worst decisions of my life. Even until today, I regret getting mixed up with such a person. Why do you think that would make me feel better? I snorted. I assume you find comfort in my misery. the misery of the pack as a whole, she said. That's where you are wrong, I muttered. Although I was the last person to feel bad for Red Lake, I had pushed them to the back of my mind. They no longer mattered to me, so their misery caused me neither joy nor anguish. Whether you lot burn or fly does not concern me. I feel nothing for Red Lake. Keep out of my way and we should not have a problem. What about Luna Grace? She asked. If she causes trouble here, Dark Moon will answer for her crimes. Truly, Red Lake did not bother me. I may never forgive them, but I forgot about them already. If that's all you came here to say, you may leave. I waved her away and she bowed as she left, an invisible weight weighing her shoulders down. I forgot about Red Lake, but that dratted pack would not leave me alone. Killian got off work early that day, so we went for a walk around the palace that evening. It had been a long time since I took a walk like this, not since I became the Luna Queen. What did the oracle say to you? Killian asked as we walked hand in hand around the garden. I gave him a rundown of my meeting with Serena and blushed when he praised me. Now all that is left is the witches, he mumbled. There was no way to force them out of hiding, and I suspected we had not given them any incentive to leave their comfort zones to live among us, so I knew it would be difficult. Still, it would be nice to be a part of the first pack with witches after such a long time. I told him about Bella, and he laughed, a cruel laugh. He told me about work. Then we continued to walk in silence. As we walked, I deliberated on telling him about the reason for our childlessness, but I bit my lips. He said he did not want children now, so was there a need to tell him? Yet I was scared of the future. He may not want children now, but when he wanted them in the future, and there was still nothing? As a late bloomer, I knew how much loathing I received from all corners. I was mocked for not being a werewolf, and the people in Red Lake did not fail to remind me every day that they only kept me around because they pitied me. Being a hybrid seemed to delay everything about me, and now that I found out that it may delay childbearing, shouldn't I let my mate know? No, not yet, I thought to myself, ignoring the voice urging me otherwise. What was the point in telling him? When we wanted kids, I would tell him. Yes, that would be the best time. As we walked, I heard several growls that made me shiver. Killian put his hand around me, tucking me into his side. I increased the patrol guards, he informed me. You are safe, I promise you. I nodded, but I could not stop myself from reacting negatively to the growls and howls ringing around me. I dug closer to Killian's side. Shall we go inside? He asked, and I nodded. Yes, please. The day had turned dark, and the growls scared me. I wanted to be in the comfort of my room now, not out in the open, where I could be attacked at any time and from any angle. As we turned to walk back to the main palace, I saw a shadow run past and I choked on a scream. What was that? I asked. What? Killian asked as the shadow ran past again. That! I exclaimed, pointing at the entrance to the forest in the distance, and like a dream, no, my worst nightmare, a wolf ran right at us. Shit, Killian cursed, shoving me behind him as he growled. I turned to watch my back, and to my horror, I saw another wolf. To my left, another and yet another at my right. We were surrounded. Killian shifted while I panicked. Warriors ran out from the forests. Jack came cursing. The wolves seemed to be multiplying from thin air as I scrambled back. They were aiming for me. As my mate and everyone else fought, nothing happened. They were closing in on my mate and me. What the hell is this? Jack grabbed one of the wolves, but like a horror story, it dissolved into thin air. What bastard dares use black magic in the palace? She cursed, and then a wolf lunged at me. I closed my eyes, letting out an ear-splitting scream. Yet again, people gathered around me, and not for the first time. I wondered why I always caused so much drama. Phantom wolves attacked us, and panic choked me into oblivion. Surprisingly, I was out for 2 days after that. When I opened my eyes, I saw my mate peering down at me with a gaunt face. I may just be the death of this man. It looks like illusion magic, my mother said. Killian pinched the bridge of his nose, pacing the room. So there really weren't any wolves? I asked and she nodded. Your fears invoked them. I closed my eyes in both embarrassment and dread. When the oracle asked about my awakening the other day, I thought little it as I assumed my dreams were enough for a hybrid, but now this. What kind of awakening brought my fears to life? Was this a gift or a curse? Illusion, Killian muttered. It sounds dangerous. It is, Victoria said. If you are not careful, you can be sucked into the illusions your mind creates, and it is capable of destroying a person's mind. Ho, would you look at that? Yet another dangerous thing around me, one I could not even avoid at that. Like last night, I muttered, and she quietly corrected me. 2 nights ago. I imagined rogues and they came to life. An inexplicable desire to laugh plagued me. Does that mean from now on my fears would begin to play out before me? She shook her head. They don't come to life. They are mere illusions, so they can't cause any physical harm. A man may fall down dead under an illusion, and once the illusion is gone, the man stands back up. Some warriors had sustained injuries that night, but once I went under, their injuries vanished along with the wolves. If things like these continued to happen, it won't be long before everyone links everything to me. And no, illusions do not bring your fears to life. It's an interesting manifestation of spirit magic, but on that day, you unknowingly projected your fears and they, to use your words, came alive around you. But with illusion magic, you can create illusions of your opponent's fears. You can create joyful memories for children or make plays to suit yourself. She shrugged. In all, your mind controls the illusions you project, and if you are not strong enough, your own illusion may consume you. In the end, my magic may just destroy me. I sent word to Cedric and Crystal, whose sickness worsened over the days. Cedric agreed, after a long back and forth, to help me master this new ability by training my mind. On an unfortunate morning, I was on my way to Killian's office when I ran into Hawk. He beamed at me and the men at his side gasped. "My dear." He put his hand and I shrugged it off. Undeterred, he grabbed my wrist. "Won't you greet me? These days I barely see your face." His tone laughed at me as he pretended to be sad. "Let's have a chat this evening, okay?" "Alpha Hawk, don't you think you are crossing the line right now?" I hissed at him, wrenching my hand from his grip and almost dislocating his shoulder in the process. "Oh ho," he laughed out loud. "Don't you think we have to talk?" He leaned forward, his eyes flashing red. "Or would you prefer for the world to know your identity?" He growled. "It would be a disaster for everyone to know a hybrid walks amongst us, don't you think?" It was an obvious threat that made me back away. "Are you?" He cut me off. 6 o'clock would be a good time, dear. Please do not be late." He drew back, patted my shoulder, and walked away with the men at his side, turning to give me questioning looks. I forced a smile as I ate with Killian that morning. No matter how many times he asked about my lack of enthusiasm, I insisted on being fine. In reality, the last thing I wanted was to worry him with all my drama, so I insisted I was fine while anxiety and dread ate up my insides throughout the day. I had to shake off Jack before I went to Hawk to ensure Killian didn't know. If he knew, he would worry, and if he worried, he would try to solve it himself, and he deserved a break. "You are here." Hawk smiled when I was ushered in. I looked around the room, a room I had seen enough times in my dreams, but never in real life. It was in the main palace, and they kept this room specifically for this man, a man who had several buildings in the capital. "Have a seat," he gestured to a seat. He was a stranger in this palace, a person who should not have a reserved space here. I should be the one pointing out a seat for him, and yet he stayed here as an important guest of the palace from the time of Scarlet's betrothal to Seth, and he never left. "How are you?" he asked, and I rolled my eyes. "Hawk, please, cut to the chase. I don't want to make small talk with you, and you know that, so please," I said with annoyance, tightening my chest. "Please, say what you have to say and let me go." The last time we sat face to face like this, he had summoned me, and I vowed we would never be in this position again. I should be the one summoning him, but yet he still summoned me today, and I had no choice but to answer his summon. Why did this man always get away with doing as he pleased? How could we cut him off? "You are my daughter, so I expect you to have at least a reasonably working brain." His lips pulled at the side in a cruel smile. "By now you should know that I want the throne," he said, his smile widening as he heard my heart stop and then start to pound hard. "Don't be scared. As my daughter, you have a lot to benefit from this." "Did you call me here to discuss treason?" His eyes lit up. "It seems like it, doesn't it?" He laughed. They call it treason, but I call it taking back what belongs to Dark Moon, your pack. My skin crawled. I belong to the Alpha Pack, I muttered, and he chuckled again. You are a bit childish, but I don't blame you. He shook his head. You grew up without proper guidance, thanks to your mother's stupidity. Again, he shook his head to show how unfortunate things were. I would have to educate you from now on. He looked me in the eye, and I shivered as I avoided his gaze. Yes, every child needs to be educated by their parents, after all. You. He shushed me before I could speak. A good child never speaks out of turn. Aghast, I almost gaped at him as he scolded me. Who does this man? As you know, the Alpha Pack is nothing to write home about. Asides from Killian, his beta and I, the only other members of my pack were the warriors employed by the Alpha King. We were not even a proper pack, just people bound together by a pack link to ensure we had somewhere to belong after breaking off the connections to our original packs so as to ensure our loyalty to the throne and no one else. Hawk, I am giving you a choice, your pack and family or a mate that would fall soon? Careful. Kalea growled at the insult and threat to her mate. Oh, what a cute wolf. Hawk laughed. One of these days, we should run together as a pack and family. Scarlet would love that. His eyes twinkled. But that aside, I need you to do something for me. I left his quarters in a daze. Hawk really, brazenly, called me to discuss treason. He was so sure I would. No, my mate and I would be unable to stop him. He needed me to call back the Oracle, to stop her from talking about the First Monarch's blessing, and to lie. He wanted me to join him in slandering my mate. What audacity! I muttered to myself, then I bumped into Scarlet. She looked at me with vacant eyes. Her dress was wrinkled and tear tracks decorated her face. Once, I thought I could use this girl against her father, but in the end, she was not worth anything to even him. She could only bring me information I already knew, and she even went as far as trying to poison me. Are you happy now? She asked in a hoarse voice as she glared at me with eyes brimming with hatred that made the hair on my arms rise. I was not happy. In fact, I was closer to being angry than happy. The first thing I did the next morning after my unfortunate meeting with Hawk and then running into Scarlet, who accused me of ripping her family apart, was to kick the Hawks out of the palace. In the neatest writing I could use, despite my hands shaking with anger, I wrote an eviction notice. The palace was under my control, so I could easily kick out unwanted guests, but I wondered if they would go without making a fuss. Please deliver this to Hawk and his daughter. I handed Ian, the first guard I ever had, the letter. He had gone on a long vacation, but now he was back. I can take it. Jack went to snatch the letter from him, but he moved faster than she did. You punk, give it to me. She kicked his shin. Jack, I growled, and she paused. Let Ian be. I missed the gloating smile he gave her as he left with the letter. Why do you need an extra guard? She complained. She had asked me this question at least 50 times since Ian's return. Is it that I am not capable enough? What can that skinny punk do to defend your majesty that I cannot? Please, stop insulting Ian. I massaged my temple, but Jack would not be Jack if she listened the first time. Your Majesty, is it because I could not butcher those phantom wolves? She continued to rage, and my heart stuttered. But it is not my fault, is it? That happened because of you. She exclaimed, and my gaze snapped to her. She continued to complain without sparing me a glance. I don't know how, but they disappeared when you fainted, so you must have had something to do with their appearance in the first place. Jack, I called, but she started another tirade. Jacqueline. She blinked as I yelled her name. What is it? She asked. What are you saying? Are you accusing me of sending those wolves to hunt my mate and I? My heart beat loud enough for people in the next room to hear. No, she flinched. I think you sucked us into your nightmare, she drawled. The wolves were difficult to kill, and the ones I fought, they moved the same way the rogues I fought the other day moved. I flinched. So I felt your mind had conjured something sinister, and the rest of us were helplessly pulled into it. That's a dangerous suggestion to throw out there like that. I could not help but growl, my anxiety making me prickly. I am only saying what I feel, she responded in indignation. Besides, when you collapsed, the wolves vanished into thin air. Poof, she snapped a finger. Just like that. Then she slapped her hands on her thighs. It was incredible. All what you are saying, it's impossible, I muttered. If Jack put things together so fast and accurately, did that mean the other warriors had also arrived at the same conclusion? Would they know? Could they have guessed? If they spread word of that incident which ended after I blacked out, witches who knew of illusions would make the connection, and then I would be in danger, hunted by covens that did not tolerate hybrids. Impossible? She snorted. How is it impossible? Your creepy friend with the weird clothing has darkness swirling around him even underneath the bright sun, so I don't think it's impossible. Cedric? I choked out the question. Is that his name? Whatever it is, that bastard should not have any funny ideas involving my sister. Jack, stop talking nonsense. Cedric doesn't have shadows clinging to him. I tried to dissuade her, but she just shrugged. Shadows, she muttered. Is that what they are called? I closed my eyes tightly. Is he a wizard or what? I choked, loudly. Her gaze cut to me in surprise. Your Majesty, are you okay? I nodded hastily, gulping down my saliva. You can't accuse people of being wizards like that, Jack. Although Cedric officially entered the palace as a wizard, very few people knew his identity. Is he not a wizard? Her brows furrowed like a curious child's. That. A figure flying into the office saved me from answering. A ball of fire flew in my direction, but Jack saved me from being burned. What? I blinked at the intrusion that came with a loud scream. Who are you? Who are you to ask me to leave the palace? Fur sprouted on Scarlet's arms as Jack held her back. I have a right to stay here. A right. I have been here before you even dreamt of leaving your backward pack for the capital. If she could breathe fire, my office would be consumed by now. Tell me, who are you? She screamed, fighting to throw Jack off. Scarlet Hawk, I muttered weakly, pushing to my feet. You were allowed a permanent room in the palace as a courtesy extended to Seth's betrothed, I explained in a steady tone despite my insides quivering. There is no need to extend a hand of courtesy to you who will never be the Luna Queen. She screamed, the sound worse than Cordelia's when I told her about her son's murder. You? Who are you? She screamed. Originally, from the beginning, this was my seat. This should have been mine, my office, my mate, my crown. She growled the last part, her eyes a blazing red, almost as red as Killian's. I belong here. She stomped her feet. Even if you take everything away from me, no, she shook her head in hysteria. No, I won't let you drive me out of my home. It was interesting to see how far she had deluded herself. This was her home, her mate, her crown? What nonsense, Kalea responded with a growl of hers. My wolf was mostly calm and docile, but not with things that concerned her mate. And to have such an evil being lay claim to Killian made her murderous. Scarlet Hawk, I growled, but she raised her hands and closed her ears. Scarlet Hawk! I shouted her name as she wriggled in Jack's hold. It was lucky all Jack did was hold her still, even though it looked like she wanted to rip the intruder to shreds. I won't listen. Whatever you say, I won't listen, she screamed. The palace is my home and I won't leave. A thief like you can't drive me out of my home. Killian came in then. I felt his presence before he opened the door, but once the door flew open with a bang, Jack turned, startled, and Scarlet took the opportunity to escape her grasp. Then she flew into my mate's arms. Killian, she screamed, clinging to him. Tell this witch. Tell her the palace is my home. She can't send me away. She tightened her hand around his neck and clung to him like a leech as he pushed her away. I was not an alpha, but I saw red. I wrenched the shameless wench off my mate and threw her to the floor. It was my first fist fight. Amethyst, stop. Killian repeatedly tried to pull me off Scarlet, but I refused to let her go. She clawed at my flesh and punched my jaw, but I made sure to do more damage to her as I repeatedly slammed her head to the ground. Amethyst! It took an alpha command to get me off Scarlet. My mate wrenched me off her and she jumped to a stand to go after me, but Jack grabbed her again. Are you out of your mind? Killian growled at her. You dare attack my mate? His tone dipped, as did the temperature in the room. She attacked me first and you saw it, Scarlet yelled. Amethyst, why do you always go after what I have? She wailed. Everything I have? Killian cut her off mid-yell and kicked her out. She went with a ferocious glare at me that I ignored. The first time I met Scarlet, she was an imposing figure that I never even dreamt of laying a hand on. She strangled me that day, and I could not fight back, but today I felt as if I had paid her back in her own coin. Although the Scarlet I first met was a dignified woman who commanded respect, while the one running out of my office was a foolish woman driven mad by unrequited love, I still felt good. When she left, Killian turned to me with a glare. "She could have hurt you," he reminded me. I shrugged. She was an alpha wolf who could best me in combat without breaking a sweat. My jaw ached as if hit by a boulder, but I had no regrets. I wanted to put my hands on her since a long time ago. "But she didn't," I answered my mate with a shrug, and he pressed his hands together as he turned away in exasperation. "She could have hurt me. But I didn't give her the chance to, and I had no intention of giving her a chance to hurt me in the future." My mother returned to her coven for a while, and 3 days later, a bottle similar to the vanishing bottle arrived. I went to Killian with it, and in a few days a trial was ready. Before the Hawks knew what hit them, the entire kingdom had heard the name Scarlet Hawk, the evil woman who tried to kill the Luna Queen using a deadly poison. It was because I used her method against her, driving public opinion against her before the magistrate sent her a letter to inform her of the trial. "Is everything set?" Killian asked, and I nodded with a smile in an attempt to hide my jitters. This would be the first time we attacked Hawk, and despite how well we hid our move and planned, there was still a chance things would blow up in our faces. "Don't be nervous," my mate said as he took my hand, squeezing it in his large one. "It will be fine." "I hope so," I muttered. "Shall I just end this?" He contemplated, and I shook my head. No matter how much Killian was accused of abusing his power, it was difficult to get rid of a man like Hawk just like that. He hid his cards well, and no matter what he did, there was never any evidence linked back to him. If he was prosecuted just like that, Dark Moon would not stay still, and with their influence in the kingdom, things would undoubtedly be bad for Killian and me. He knew this. I knew this, but it was upsetting to have to deal with Hawk, a person who flouted the laws, using the law. "No, let's not be irrational," I answered. Irrationality was not something we could afford now that we had all but declared war on Hawk. He was smart enough to hide well, so we had to beat him at his game, and for that, we needed to be smart, not irrational. We were the last to arrive, and I pretended not to see Hawk's burning gaze. "Calm down, Amethyst," I whispered to myself. "He can't hurt you." The trial began with the king's pronunciation. All I had to do was watch. My wolf paced inside me, feeling as anxious as I did. Was it right to go after Hawk like this? Would we be fine? He would become more hostile after this. He knew my biggest secret. Was it really fine to go after him like this? The punishment awaiting Scarlet was clear even without this trial. Even though I felt Hawk's gaze burning into the side of my face, I refused to look his way, scared of what I would see or if he would see how terrified I was at the moment. "It doesn't matter," I said to myself. "Yes," my wolf replied. "It doesn't matter who strikes first. Yes, yes, better to be the attacker than to play defense all the time," I said. "Yes, we know he would never rest until he gets his hand on the throne," Killian responded. "And we can't let him do that." We continued reassuring ourselves. "Plus, Scarlet refused to leave our maid alone," Killian added. "Yes, she's basically interfering with his life with her obsession with him." "This is for our mate," Killian said, and I nodded. "I never did it." Scarlet's exclamation pulled me out of the conversation in my head. Who in their right mind would believe a jealous Omega over me? She stressed the last word and looked around haughtily, her gaze cold. Her arrogant gaze came to rest on me, a gaze reminiscent of a person who did not know her place, a person so used to having the upper hand that the thought of losing never crossed their mind. It's madness in the first place for me to be paraded like a criminal like this. This is an insult to Dark Moon, she exclaimed. "Dark Moon? Does it mean that her pack is involved in this fiasco?" Murmurs broke out around us. People had not forgotten the protest a while back, where I was accused of being barren. I touched my stomach. No, we made sure they remembered. Permanent. The reason there was no little prince or princess on the way was that someone was aiming for the Alpha King's family. That person turned out to be Scarlet Hawk, a woman well known for pursuing the Alpha King. Isn't that girl a dedicated follower of Miss Scarlet anyway? Someone pointed at Mary. Why would she be jealous of her idol? Public opinion was a scary thing. One minute it was for you, and the next it could be completely against you. The trial proceeded when the judge called everyone back to order. Scarlet frowned as if it was the first time she stood on the other side of the people's favor. It may be. She was always the beloved daughter of Alpha Hawk, the future Luna Queen, and at a point, the next Alpha of Dark Moon Pack. Now she was just the spiteful woman who tried to kill the Queen. I could not hide my smile. Truthfully, if the only evidence we had against her was Mary, it would not be a convincing trial, but then Mary presented the vial of poison she received from Scarlet, and from the redhead's expression, it was clearly the first time she took all this seriously. Her words would always outweigh Mary's. An Alpha over an Omega? Of course, everyone would believe the Alpha, but what if the Omega had substantive evidence? "Hey, what's that?" she exclaimed as I gave in to the urge to turn to Hawk. He had an indescribable look in his eyes, and I spun away from him, goosebumps rising on my arms. Killian put his hand around me, and I took in a calming breath. "This is the poison Miss Scarlet asked me to use on Her Majesty," Mary answered, bowing her head. "That's impossible." Surprise, surprise, I laughed inside me. I never gave you such a thing. There's another witness." This time, Hawk hissed out loud when Victoria was led in. "Who is this? Didn't Alpha Hawk bring this woman with him from Dark Moon?" Again, murmurs broke out around us. The excitement in the air was palpable. Even I breathed a sigh of relief. Things were going as planned. I ignored the voice in my head asking me how long it would continue like this. It took a lot of guilt tripping, but I succeeded in getting Victoria to confess, essentially putting her life on the line. Yet, I did not feel a shred of guilt. She either came out herself or waited for Hawk to expose her. And he would. He would because there was no way I would join hands with him, so he would blackmail me using this woman. "Miss Scarlet ordered the poison from me," Victoria said, and Scarlet screeched. This ungodly woman, I never did such a thing," she exclaimed. "What nonsense." She jumped out of her seat, but everyone gasped. "Is she trying to escape?" someone yelled. "She walked in here on her own and remained unrestrained. It was a common courtesy for an Alpha of her status. This, she growled, her eyes flashing the red of her wolf. "This nonsense show? Didn't the poison experts say they could not identify the poison?" Alpha Hawk called, his voice quiet but powerful. Everyone quietened. "How could a mere woman like you make such a sophisticated thing? How do we know you have not been paid to say nonsense?" "You of all people should know, Sylvester," Victoria said. The hush in the room became absolute. "I am a witch." At first, no one said anything, but as expected, everyone started to talk at the same time. "A what?" "Come, Micah, let's leave this dangerous place." A woman grabbed her child and hurried out of the courtroom. Silence, silence. The judge called for order, but it was impossible to restore order. In the end, the trial was adjourned for 2 days, and the poison experts were instructed to inspect the poison to see if it matched the one detected in my cup. We spent only a few hours in the court, but when we returned home, I was tired to my bones. The anxiety I tried holding at bay gradually seeped out. At this point, I was too tired to even be anxious. Killian went back to work while Jack and Eliza sat chattering around me. "A witch! I never expected it." Eliza threw away her demure appearance as she shouted in excitement. "A witch working with Scarlet! Your Majesty, aren't you surprised?" She asked, but I could not help but shrug. Not really. My uninterested tone drained her of her excitement. "Yeah, you must have known of her origin since you both are close," Jack said, and Eliza's mouth dropped open, so I confessed. 2 days later, we attended the trial again, but this time, Scarlet was escorted in after we were all seated. We heard from the poison experts as soon as the session started, and the verdict was as predicted. The poison could not be identified, but it proved deadly when tested, and it was the same as the substance found in my cup a while back. "What does all this have to do with me?" Scarlet exclaimed. Unlike her appearance the other day, today she looked pale and haggard. Dark circles decorated her eyes, and her haughty gaze was nowhere to be found. "Alpha Scarlet Hawk, have you forgotten why you are here?" The judge growled at her, and she looked on the verge of growling right back. "But I am innocent." Indignation rang in her tone. "The evidence says otherwise, doesn't it?" he exclaimed. "Why would you believe a jealous Omega and a dangerous witch over me?" she demanded. "Have you forgotten who I am?" Her eyes found her father in the crowd. "I am Scarlet Hawk. Do you think my father would let this humiliation go?" Hawk broke the eye contact first, and she sucked in an audible breath. Hawk must have realized this was a battle he would not win, or maybe he gave up on Scarlet long ago when he realized she could not be used in his quest for the throne. For people like Hawk, his biological child was no different from the next person out there. Everyone existed either as a useful tool or a worthless thing to him. For him, Scarlet had outlived her relevance as a pawn, and thus he had no reason to keep her around. I looked at Scarlet, took a good and hard look at her to commit the image of her surprised disappointment and then fear when her father turned away from her to my memory. I stared at her so hard that her gaze cut to me, and the fear morphed into hatred as I watched. That, too, I committed to memory, never to forget. I never wanted to forget the pit I escaped. The same lips I used to curse the goddess I would now use to thank her. The same mouth I used to curse at my mother, wondering why she abandoned me, was the same mouth I would now use to thank her. All the years of sorrow and hardship in Red Lake did not hurt me the way Hawk turning away from his daughter hurt Scarlet at that moment. I would choose the misery in Red Lake over being used and discarded by a man I called father. "Scarlet Hawk, who else did you work with to hurt the Alpha King's Luna?" the judge asked. Now Scarlet was as good as guilty. Yesterday, I panicked when I heard a man from Dark Moon went to visit the judge, thinking he may be bought over or threatened by Hawk to let his daughter go. It was a good thing the judge was a part of Elias's already crumbling family, so he knew not to anger Killian more. "I did not work with anyone. Why aren't you listening to me? All these people are lying. I never connived with anyone to hurt Amethyst. I am friends with the Luna, if you don't know. We are friends. More than friends, we are sisters. Why would I want to harm her? Tell me, what do you think I would gain from hurting someone close to me?" She went on a long rant, her gaze cutting to her father over and over again, but he looked ahead calmly. Hawk was meticulous in covering his tracks. No one ever suspected him of treason, as he never acted suspiciously. Never had there been a time when he or his pack were cast in a poor light because there was never any evidence to implicate them. This must be the first for him. For the 9th time, I laughed inside me. Scarlet continued to rant, but I zoned her out. For the first time, I felt I could fight back against Hawk. I did not need to wait to react to his next move. Rather, I could just attack him like he had been attacking my mate and I. The courtroom after that was a mess. Scarlet kept insisting on her innocence, asking why anyone would believe others over here. The witnesses were not credible, she said. They were jealous of her, but it didn't matter. The verdict had been decided before we even contacted a judge. It wasn't me, believe me. Her frantic eyes searched the crowd. "This is a setup, believe me!" She shouted as she was escorted out. "Father, why are you not saying anything?" "You know," he glared hard at her, and I flinched. "Father, I have nothing to do with a daughter like you." I frowned. Even though I knew Scarlet outlived her relevance to Hawk, I still expected him to cover for her to save his face. Whether or not he cared about his daughter did not matter, but her being taken away as a criminal put a stain on his image, the first stain. The Hawks, the Alphas of Dark Moon, a powerful family from a powerful pack that most wolves envied, they were without stain or blemish in the eyes of everyone else. Hawk cared about his image, after all. He knew how bad it was for public opinion to be against a person. He cared about his image, so why did he allow his daughter to be dragged out like that? Why did he not try to save her? He could have silenced her himself, but he let her go like this. It made me pause. He did not even look angry, rather, he wore a blank expression as he left the courtroom. He paused as he walked past his restrained and struggling daughter. "I thought I raised you better than this." He shook his head before walking away. My mind flashed back to one of my earlier dreams. He had warned her not to attack me so foolishly, advised her to be smart, and even hit her. I could only assume he was talking about his words that day, but I felt I was missing something. Hawk was not supposed to be this disinterested in his daughter's case, even if he disowned her. That evening, I stood on my balcony, letting the cool evening breeze rustle my hair. Killian entered a short while later. "How do you feel?" he asked, wrapping his hand around my waist from behind and pulling me into his chest. I am not sure. I remembered Noah then. He had been a constant threat to my life, but after his death, I felt a sort of unexplainable emptiness. Was it the same with Scarlet? Unlike with Noah, I could not even feel relieved. Killian and I prepared meticulously for this trial to ensure nothing went wrong. Despite the thorough preparation, we were still anxious about things going wrong. Hawk was not a simple man to beat, and we were sure he would not let his precious daughter go like that. I had imagined the trial dragging on for a week, with Mary and Victoria being drilled every day and Hawk preparing counter-evidence to aid his daughter. He did not even interfere. "Did you expect Hawk to act like that?" I asked when he rested his chin on my head. "I feel he has something bigger planned, something he doesn't want even his daughter's dilemma to sidetrack him from. Scarlet has no importance to Hawk anymore. I did not expect him to fight tooth and nail for her release, but I also did not expect him to be so relaxed in all this." His chest vibrated against my back as he spoke. "If he is up to something, it would only take a matter of time for it to be unraveled," he assured me. "I just hope he doesn't take us by surprise," I muttered. The frequency of my dreams had reduced, and I realized how reliant I had become on dreams. Even though I never dreamt of the future again, I still had dreams that showed me what Hawk was up to. I knew his moves because of my dreams. Unfortunately, the more I practiced illusions with Cedric, the less I dreamt. Without knowing my opponent's moves, I felt vulnerable and even more apprehensive, as if I was losing a talent right before a major performance. Scarlet is on death row. If she goes missing at this point, he would be the prime suspect, so I am sure he has abandoned his daughter to her fate, Killian muttered. I have people watching him, so we would be prepared for any move he makes. If you are so sure, I answered, choosing to trust my mate. There was no point in worrying about Hawk's move. We just had to be prepared for a hit. I only wished that I would know his plan in advance. Have you ever wondered why I hate Scarlet so much? He asked, and I paused to think. Because she is arrogant? I felt him shake his head. It's more than that, so much more, he let out a dry chuckle. It's no secret that I was the family eyesore, he muttered with the same dry chuckle as earlier. My father hated me, after all. It was easier for him to blame me than it was to blame himself. He wanted to get rid of me, and Scarlet gave him the opportunity to. I knew he had a history with Scarlet, but I did not know how deep or how painful said history was, and when I found out, I wished I had hit the useless wench a bit more. I even wanted to storm her cell and slam her face into a wall, multiple times, until she bled, but I held myself back. There was nothing likable about her, but I did not particularly hate her either way. She was someone who did not exist in my mind or heart, except for the times when she barged into the palace and made a fuss as if it was hers already. I felt him bury his nose in my hair and take a whiff. I hoped it didn't stink. Well, it happened when I was 15. His muscles stiffened, and I pretended not to notice. By then, she had become infatuated with me, but I did not realize it yet. She was just an annoying person who made my uncomfortable home even more uncomfortable, but she... He paused and took in a deep breath. She had a plan of hers. Sometimes she acted nice out of nowhere, and other times she cussed me out loud enough for the entire capital to hear. Then one day she brought a drink to share with me. It was the first time she ever offered me anything so naturally. I didn't want it. His grip around my waist tightened. She got angry, made a fuss, and he trailed off as his voice thinned out. I clenched my fist as he continued in a tone that lost all emotions the longer he spoke. Not only had Scarlet tried to feed him Wolf's Bane, but she also had the audacity to turn back to accuse him of trying to intoxicate her and have his way with her. And everyone believed her. I hissed in annoyance, but I knew the answer before he even responded. Who would have believed a prince called the Spare over Scarlet, the daughter of Alpha Hawk and the future Luna Queen? I do not think it mattered whether I was believed or not. I heard the frown in his tone, and I turned to look up at him. but his grip on my waist tightened, so I stayed still. My father saw an opportunity to get rid of me, and he took it. He could not sentence me to death, so he chose the next best thing. He was sent off to fight rogues, basically banished from the palace. He shuffled from the Alpha Academy, a place known for educating delinquent Alpha and Beta successors, and the battleground. I am sure he was expected to die being sent off to fight rogues with no preparation. My blood boiled just from thinking about it. His father sent him off to die. I always imagined what having a family would be like, but since I found mine, I realized a person's family could hurt them much more than anyone else. I even became grateful that I did not grow up with my family, and hearing Killian's experience with his so-called family, I reaffirmed my stance. Why was it his fault that his father cheated on his chosen mate? Why did the former king choose to blame him for his mistakes? He wanted to kill him off, erase him just like that. That Killian was his blood did not matter to him. He cared more about his reputation than his child. Are you angry? I nodded, and he rested his chin atop my head and... Don't be. He laughed, but the sound lacked mirth. I am over it. I only remembered because after so long I finally removed Scarlet from my side. He sighed. Everywhere became silent as I fumed inside. Scarlet Hawk was really his bane. How could she do such a thing to him and still run after him without any shame? I remembered when she came to me to propose a fake friendship. My blood boiled even hotter as I thought of how shamelessly she confessed her love for my mate right in my presence. She almost ruined his life, yet she coveted the seat beside him. Were the Hawks deranged? How could the pair be so despicable and shameless? Despite that, I hissed in annoyance. What sort of father does that to his son? My father was, he paused to choose his words, unremarkable. I blinked in surprise. His leadership was lax. He cared more about women than his duties, and the kingdom was falling apart right before him, but he barely had control of his own desires, so how could he control those under him? His tone was leveled and bland, as if he was talking about the weather and not his wicked father. Half the problems I have to tackle today are the things he left unattended till they rotted. He was honestly an incompetent person, so you should not be surprised that he was also a useless father. I blinked at the harsh yet indifferent review of his father. Is that so? It was awkward listening to him talk about his father like that. I never met Alpha King Seth. I and Red Lake was too far from the capital for us to feel his power, but we always believed the Alpha King, no matter who he was a capable and blessed person, not an incompetent king. Yeah, it took me a while to realize, so I spent a chunk of my childhood trying to make myself good enough for him, but I realized he was the problem, not me. I felt him shrug. I am sorry, I muttered. Yeah, me too, he mumbled. I am sorry I was ever foolish enough to try to earn his love. He snorted. It's only normal to want a parent's love, I muttered. Then I thought of Hawk and wondered if I too would have tried to win his love if I grew up under him. I would have. I didn't even need to think hard to imagine it. Hawk would use me thoroughly, and I would have allowed myself to be used so he could love me. We should celebrate, he said. Rather than dwelling on awful memories, we should be celebrating. I agreed, and we celebrated with drinks and a night that had me aching the next morning. Despite my trembling legs, I woke up with a smile. Scarlet was guilty, so she was thrown into the dungeons, awaiting the priests who would prepare her to meet her maker. I should not feel so good about a person's impending death, but when I remembered what she did to Killian and how she herself tried to kill me with poison, I did not have any guilt about her death. I was the last person to sympathize with my enemy. Your Majesty. Eliza and Jack greeted me as I stepped into the office. Eliza trembled just from meeting my gaze, and I wondered if I made a mistake telling her of my hybridity. I suspected it would be out in the open soon, and I considered these girls my friends, so I gave them a heads up, but the way Eliza looked at me changed. Jack remained the same, but Eliza... Are you scared of me now? I asked, curious. Did she think I would hurt her or what? My guts clenched, but I ignored the awful feeling. No, just... She stuttered, but her answer did not satisfy me. She is amazed, Jack answered for her sister. I mean, a hybrid. She whispered after looking around like a fugitive. I laughed at her expression, feeling the tension in my shoulders release. I am just She trailed off again. Amazed, Jack supplied again, and she nodded. Truly, Eliza babbled. I took a seat and watched the pile of letters on my desk. Any message from the Oracle? I asked, and Eliza shook her head. We promised to communicate often, but I had not heard a word from Serena, and I did not know where she was or how to contact her. I have so much to do. I eyed the documents that had been ignored since the whole Scarlet fiasco began. They had piled up steadily to the point where they could no longer be ignored. As if I did not have enough work to do, Hawk gave me more work the very next day. There's trouble. It was Victoria that first alerted me to the dangers ahead. What is it? I asked, half-heartedly listening to what she had to say. There were stacks of invitations on my desk, newspapers I had no time to look through, and tea that had long gone cold. It's your Hawk, she paused. He's up to something dangerous, she said. I continued to nod as I inspected the budget for the last quarter of the year. Amethyst, she exclaimed, and I snapped out of Numberland. What is it? I raised my head. It was the first time I paid proper attention to her since she entered the office without knocking. When did you get here? I stretched my arms over my head and bent my neck this way and that. Hawk is up to something, she exclaimed, her eyes fiery. When isn't he up to something? I fought down a snort. Killian had people on him, so if he made a move, they would report it in time. No, this time, I feel it's no joke. He's up to something. She looked frantically around the office, her eyes darting from my documents to my face as if Hawk's agenda would be written somewhere in the room. Do you have any idea what it is, then? I asked with a sigh, massaging the point between my brows. It has something to do with you. My fingers paused their movements. What if he exposes you? I think that's what he's up to. What? You mean he's telling people I am a hybrid? As my brows furrowed as she bit her lips, I swallowed as a sudden chill spread goosebumps on my skin. He may do that. Victoria nodded slowly. He can do that. It wasn't unexpected, but it didn't make it any less scary. Even when Hawk used to pretend to be good, he never went back on his words. He told me he would expose me if I didn't cooperate with him, and I didn't doubt him for a second. But why now? Ha! One shouldn't expect their enemies to be considerate when they launch attacks, but Hawk really chose the worst time to cause another stir. The worst time for me, at least. Don't worry. Even if he exposes me, it won't be unexpected, I mumbled, despite the fever overtaking the chill inside me. It was only a matter of time before people found out anyway. There must be people who suspected me already after the other night. The workers in the palace must have seen Victoria and me together often, and Cedric, who did not bother to conceal himself as thoroughly as he used to in the beginning. And now that everyone knew Victoria was a witch, it was even more likely that I would be found out soon. Amethyst, Victoria drawled. You may not understand the dangers to you, but I want you to think of this seriously, she said. The hybrid hunt among witches is not a joke. I know it isn't, I responded, fighting the urge to pull my hair. You've mentioned it so many times that I've become afraid, but what do you want me to do? I hissed. It's not as if I can hide forever. I am a public figure, you know? I am being watched from every corner, so it's not like I can hide forever. The stress of the palace was getting to me, making me irritable. Hide, Victoria said. Hide, Amethyst. You can't wait till they find you here. My eyes followed her unsettled ones, and together we looked around my empty office. Jack would be eavesdropping from outside the door, but other than that, there was no one here. Can't you protect me? I asked the woman in front of me. She paled. You were a powerful witch before you went into hiding. Rather than making your daughter hide, you should think of protecting her. Another day, I would go over how selfish I sounded then, but what could I do? We needed as many human resources as available, so if I had to resort to emotional blackmail, so be it. It was better than listening to her impossible advice. Hide? How could I hide? Where would I hide? If I could not protect you then, do you think I can protect you now? She exclaimed, tears in her eyes. The best we can do is... No, I cut her off. Don't say the best we can do is hide. I shook my head, pressing my lips together. How long do you think I can hide? For the rest of my life? Would I need to give up my identity, wear a new face as you do, cut off from everyone I know and love? Do you think I want to give up the life I have now and hide away for the rest of my life? Amethyst. Mother. I cut her off and she flinched. I never called her that. It was awkward to call someone mother, but I did it then, the words slipping from my lips without a preamble. Even if you do nothing for me, I have Killian. I smiled, just thinking of my mate. And I can create illusions. It was a difficult ability to master, with Cedric cursing me out almost daily as I failed time and time again to master the basic. I had the ability nonetheless, an ability I could use in protecting myself. It's dangerous, Victoria cried in exasperation. Life in itself is dangerous. I shrugged. This would be the last time we have this conversation. I leaned back in my seat, feeling a headache coming on as I massaged my temples. If you want to do something for me, it would be to hone your magic for my sake. True to her speculations, word got around of my hybridity. It was hearsay as of the next morning, but it was news that spread as fast as fire on a dry bush. By the morning of the next day, there were papers with bold text written above images of me. Some were fascinated, some were scared, and some were hateful, but they were not the ones that mattered. The wolves could only talk about me, but they could not target me. The older covens that abhorred wolves and considered hybrids abominations were going to be the problem. I am sorry, Killian said with a sigh when we had breakfast together that morning. Lately, I feel all I can do is apologize to you. Why? Did you leak the information about my hybridity? I snorted to lighten the mood, but my insides twisted and turned. Hawk's move was expected, but it didn't make it any less frightening. I am sure you imagined none of these when you agreed to be my mate. My mate mumbled, his posture stiff and his voice strained. You've been at the end of countless unfavorable rumors, and I cannot help this feeling of regret. I dragged you into all this. Yeah, you did not give me a choice, did you? I puffed out my chest and imitated his haughty expression the day he declared I was to be his fake mate, whether or not I liked it. It was supposed to lighten the mood, but it turned out to be a poor joke. Killian, stop it, I scolded when he pulled at his hair, gritting his teeth. You always remind me we are no longer fake mates, but I guess it's my turn to remind you today. I got out of my seat and walked over to him, unraveling the fingers gripping his hair. The goddess paired us together, and I'm not delusional, love. I never thought standing beside you would be all roses and sunshine. After all, you were the most eligible alpha in the kingdom, so there were bound to be jealous people trying to tear us apart. Petty jealousy and Hawk, and quite different, don't you think? He pulled me into his thighs and buried his face in my neck. I am exhausted, all this. It's too much, and half the time I wonder if it's worth it. He mumbled into my skin. You are suffering all these, and for what? It sounded like resignation. I swallowed thickly through my tightening throat. Hey, Killian, you offered me the seat of the most powerful woman in this kingdom. Don't have any funny ideas of taking my seat away now, I warned half-jokingly. Also, think of Seth, I mentioned his brother, and as expected, he stiffened. Even if you hate this kingdom, think of him. For Seth, Hawk should never win. We are suffering all this to make sure Hawk never gets what he wants, I emphasized. He paused, then sighed again. Would he blame me for wanting a break? Here. Killian wrapped a scarf around my neck. I do not want you getting cold. I gave him an incredulous look but said nothing. The days were getting colder, but not to the point of needing a scarf. Take my jacket. Your face looks pale. He was about to take off his jacket, but I could not keep mute any longer. Killian, we are adult wolves, I reminded him. Only children who hadn't shifted suffered from colds. Let's go inside. I stretched out my hand to him, and he took it without a moment of hesitation. My body warmed from head to toe. The palace would be in turmoil now, and it may even fan the rumors of me being an evil witch, but for now, that was not our concern. When Killian said he needed a break, I feared he wanted to quit it all and gallop into the sunset, but he meant a literal break, not giving up. He decided yesterday that we needed a break, and so here we were. I gazed at the villa overseeing the beach and shook my head, remembering Luciano's haven. Killian, I am a fool, I said as we walked into the villa hand in hand. You are not, my mate refuted in a heartbeat. Don't say that again. No, really, I was stupid, I insisted, but my words were met with a growl. Ha, sorry. I flinched at his intense reaction. No one is allowed to insult you, not even yourself. His tone had an edge of warning, so I could only nod in response to his words. "Why would you even say that about yourself?" he asked, his tone softening, as if his earlier reaction was nothing but a figment of my imagination. I just remembered Luciano's Haven," I muttered, holding his hand tighter. "Seeing this place reminded me of that day, that's all." "Oh." His head turned slightly to the side facing away from me. "It was our first date, and I ruined it." No, I ruined it," I exclaimed. He went through the hassle of putting everything together to tell me how he felt, and all I could do was deny his words, effectively making him a liar. "No, I ruined it. I suspected you did not reciprocate my feeling, yet I ruined the mood. Despite all the coaching I received from Eliza, I ended up doing things out of order. In the end, you could not even enjoy your meal." He shrugged at the end of his words. "I realized I loved you, and I just wanted you to hear it, whether or not you believed me." "I should have believed you," I insisted. "You were always good to me, but I made myself blind to the signs. That's why I insulted myself earlier. If I did not purposely avoid the signs, we would have enjoyed the amazing date you planned, but I ruined it. No, it was my fault." From then on, we played a game of faults. I insisted it was my fault. Our first date was ruined, but he insisted it was his. The argument continued even until we reached our room, ending when we stepped out to the balcony that faced the beautiful blue waters. The argument ended, but I firmly believed the ruination of our first date was my fault, and I had a sinking suspicion that he believed it was his fault. Another day, I would try to make him see how ridiculous I acted then, but at that moment, I appreciated the beauty before me. "It's beautiful," I muttered in awe of the sun setting before me. "It is," Killian muttered. I turned to give him a smile and caught him looking at me with a soft smile playing on his lips. Somehow I felt he wasn't talking about the view ahead of us. I avoided his gaze as my insides warmed up. He let out a low chuckle, but I could not bring myself to look at him. "I've missed you." He wrapped a hand around my waist and tucked me into his side. "We live together." I pretended not to know what he meant. "Yes, but I do not see you often enough. The few times I see you, we end up talking about Hawk." He sighed, hugging me tighter. "I miss the days when we could go on walks together or when we went shopping together. I miss you." "I miss you too." I snaked a hand around his waist. I saw him every day, yet it was not the same. These days, what little time we spent together always involved work, and more work. If it wasn't Hawk, it was Fraser's wife, the Eliases, and others. There was hardly ever time for Killian and I, so I missed him. I missed my mate. "Hawk has taken too much from us," I added with a sigh. "That bastard followed us like a damn shadow. No matter how we tried to ignore him, his matter always came up." "Let's not talk about him now," Killian murmured. "I am in a good mood now, so let's preserve this mood. In a few days, we would have to deal with him again, so for now, while we are here, let's pretend he doesn't exist." He grabbed my hands in his. "You and I, Killian and Amethyst, two parts of a whole. As long as we are here, let's pretend the kingdom doesn't exist. It's just us, ordinary wolves with no titles and no kingdom to shoulder." "Okay," I responded with a grin. It was too tempting an offer to refuse. There were staff in the villa. There had to be, but I did not meet any of them. I could only assume Killian had instructed them to be as scarce as possible, so when it was time to have a bath, we went to get the water from the kitchen ourselves, but it was already heated. We helped each other with bathing. Killian dried my hair with a serious expression on his face, as if drying hair was an important task he could not afford to make a mistake with. He helped me comb my hair, tie it back, and then he helped me dress. After dressing, it was time for dinner. The table was set before we arrived, but whoever set the table did not appear after we entered. Unfamiliar dishes were spread out on the table. Killian seemed to know it well as he dug in, so I followed him excitedly. Eatables ranging from lamb stew to unknown dishes to cakes lay spread out before us. I had a taste of everything set out on the table, eager to explore. "Good?" I nodded at Killian's question as I stuffed my face. "Slow down," he exclaimed when I shoved a large piece of cake into my mouth. Who knew that stew and cake went so well together? "It's delicious," I answered, after swallowing. Then I shoved a piece of steak into my mouth. The food here tasted better than what the chef at home usually made, so I proceeded to eat like a starved thief. "Can I have some?" Killian asked, and I nodded, stuffing my face with cake without a care in the world. My seat moved, and my eyes widened. Fork almost clattering to the ground, I found the space between my mate and I reduced, and in the blink of an eye his face filled my vision. Then his lips touched mine and a fire burned in my guts. His eyes twinkled as he pulled back while I gaped at him. "Yeah, it's delicious. There's a plate right in front of you," I exclaimed, my ears ringing. "It wouldn't taste half as good," he said with a shrug while I screamed internally. I looked around furtively, thinking the people who made dinner possible would be hanging around to clear the table. What if they were standing to the side watching us? "Oh ho, why are you shy? You've had much more than his tongue inside you." My wolf cackled, and I shut her out immediately. "Not here. Not in plain view of nobody?" The villa was as silent as the night. After that, dinner continued with Killian trying to tease me. We finished dinner, and afterwards, we went up to the room, huddled into each other, and slept off the fatigue from the long journey here. The next morning, I got served breakfast in bed, and I looked at my mate in a new light. Pretending not to have responsibilities was the best. Here, he wasn't the alpha king, just my mate. I didn't need to share him with an entire kingdom. Here, he was all mine. "Is that greed I see in your eyes?" He poked my nose as my thoughts ran amok. "I don't want to share you," I said, determination ringing in my tone. "Share me?" he frowned. "I am all yours." "With work, I just realized what I've been missing out on." He burst into laughter as I exclaimed in indignation. "No, seriously," I exclaimed. "If we could be a normal couple and do normal things like this, we could eat together and spend all day gossiping and go on runs together, but we can't do all that." Then I burst into tears and he recoiled. To my horror, the tears did not stop no matter how much he coaxed. I cried so hard I threw up my delicious lamb stew. Then I felt better, so we went out to the beach, shifted into our wolves, and tried to splash each other. I had a good time. We had a good time, but our good time came to an abrupt end when Orion found us. "You are hell-bent on catching a cold, aren't you?" Killian muttered while Kalea whined, unwilling to leave the water. He gathered her into his arms, but my wolf was stubborn. Rather than go willingly, she suddenly moved, pushing him so hard he stumbled. "Come on now," he tried again, but Kalea wanted to stay out. I did too, so I quietly laughed at her antics. "Kalea?" he growled when my wolf trotted back to the water. In the end, he gave in to the temptation of spending more time outside. Outside of the palace, I enjoyed the freedom of being an ordinary wolf, and it was a welcomed reprieve from the constant worry of what was happening or what would happen. Here, I could live as if I had no troubles, no burdens, and no responsibilities. I almost wanted to continue here for as long as possible. Spending time with my mate was the best, and it was something we never actually got to do since we got together. "Cucumbers? Who likes those?" he snorted, his fingers playing on my shoulder. "I like cucumbers," I admitted. "You have a weird taste then," he muttered. "But I always knew that, so I am not surprised." I laughed at the quip. We spent our second night away from the palace talking until dawn. Despite living together for so long and sharing a bed every night, we still did not know something as simple as each other's favorite colors, so we spent the night learning mundane things about each other. I was falling asleep when the sound of a door opening startled me awake. Considering the quiet we enjoyed, aside from the sounds of tweeting birds, the sound of the door opening and closing was enough to startle us both. "Hello?" It was the unmistakable voice of the beta. "Killian?" Orion continued to shout until Killian cursed. "You should sleep." He kicked the covers off him as he moved. "I will handle him." He pressed a kiss to my forehead and exited the room, and that was how Orion shattered our little bubble. Although Killian said to go back to sleep, it was impossible for me to go back to sleep, so I got out of bed, washed my mouth, and fixed my appearance before I exited the room. I met a tense atmosphere as I stepped out. "Good morning." I greeted them since none of the men noticed my arrival. "Ah," Orion stood. "I greet the Luna Queen." I waved away his greeting. "What's the matter?" I asked, taking a seat beside my mate. Killian's face remained unreadable, even as he wrapped a hand around my shoulder to pull me closer to him, but I felt the tension around him, so I probed further. What's the matter? It is, Hawk. Orion winced at Killian's growl. I am sorry. I know I was supposed to handle everything in your absence, but things are getting out of hand, and there is a limit to what I can do as your beta. What is he up to this time? I asked, despite the bitterness that welled up in my heart. How did this man manage to torment me no matter the distance between us? Even before I met him, his existence hung over me like a dark cloud. As you know, the issue with your identity, Orion chanced a glance at Killian before he continued. He came out to claim you. My jaw slackened in horror. A coven reached out to me, and they are requesting, no, demanding we hand you over. It was as I feared. Would this be the beginning of a new hybrid hunt? Also, there has been an increase in rogue sightings, and worst of all, Orion paused to gather his breath, then he burst out. The Oracle has gone missing. That part made me blink. What? I stuttered, and he took a deep breath. How? When? What? She was scheduled to arrive at Whitecrest Pack in the east a while back, but it has been 3 days since anyone last heard from her. They sent a message to the temple, and the temple reached out to the palace, but since yesterday, I have sent out search parties and contacted as many alphas as I can, but there is no trace of the Oracle. Orion bounced his knees. I am sorry I had to cut your vacation short, but things are not good. Not good was putting things mildly. Things were terrible. How could so many things go wrong in the short while we were away? Serena, she was my friend. She took a step out of the temple after so long, all because of me. Although she often threw me off guard with her words, she went to such lengths to prove my mate's legitimacy because I asked her to, and now Hawk may have her in his palms. Anger burned hot in my chest as I thought of that bastard's ugly face. He had a lot of cards up his sleeve. It was no wonder he abandoned his daughter so easily. He had his moves calculated, and she was already an ignorable card to him. I am sorry we have to return, Killian said as we returned to our room. Orion went to prepare the carriage for our return to the palace earlier than we planned. My lips pursed on their own when I imagined the palace. At one time in my life, the palace was not a place I could even dream about entering. The luxurious home of the Alpha King and his queen was a place most people coveted and hoped to see at least once in their lifetime, but now, to me, it had become a suffocating hellhole, a place that filled me with dread and annoyance just from thinking about it. You can stay back for a while, Killian grumbled. I will get things sorted so you can stay for as long as you want. Even as he spoke, I could see the reluctance in his eyes. His face brightened when I shook my head. Don't forget we are mates. He smiled, but frowned after that. I am sorry for making you suffer like this. His frown deepened. Things would be simpler for you if... I cut off his rambling. We are mates, I said with a glare. None of this is your fault, so stop apologizing. We are in this together, so let's leave quickly. We have an enemy to face. He cracked a smile. It was a small, tiny smile, but it was a smile nonetheless. Killian entered work mode as soon as we boarded the carriage. Orion filled him in on what we had missed, and document after document entered his hands as we went. The calm and free atmosphere surrounding him yesterday seemed like a lie compared to the stiff air around him then. As if feeling my gaze burning into his profile, he raised his head and his stiff expression transformed with a sweet smile that made my heart skip a beat. He chuckled before going back to work. His smile not only warmed my belly, but it also gave me reassurance. It didn't matter the problems we had to face now. As long as I had Killian, the future was certainly bright. 1,001 men like Hawk may arise in the future, but as long as I never lost Killian, as long as I could see his face and watch him smile, then I think I could withstand them all. I never trusted anyone as much as I trusted Killian at that moment. As he worked with furrowed brows, I felt a certain peace in my mind as if Hawk was done for already. Killian would take care of him. It was the infinite faith in the Alpha King that I once mocked my wolf for in the past, but I felt it then. When we arrived at the palace, Killian and I went our separate ways. You must be tired, so take a bath and sleep, all right? He said, kissing me in plain view of the welcome party. I may not join you for dinner tonight, but we will have breakfast together like usual. I nodded, and he smiled again before he left with Orion. Although he asked me to rest, it was impossible for me to. As he went to the Emerald Annex, I took Eliza and Jacqueline to the office. "Welcome back," Eliza said, her tone tinged with nervousness. "Do you need anything?" "How bad is it?" I cut to the chase. It's not so bad," Eliza muttered, but Jacqueline scoffed. She had a bit of blood on the side of her lips, and it looked very, very fresh. "Have you been fighting?" I asked, and she shrugged. "You are lucky to have a guard who defends your honor as I do." She puffed out her chest. As if things weren't bad enough, the next day we received a report from Scarlet's special warden. It said that she was acting deranged, hitting her head on the ground despite being docile since she was taken in. She refused her meals, and for the past 2 days she had shifted into her wolf and refused to shift back. "Someone is making rogues," Eliza said, after scanning through the stack of papers set out in front of her. "There have never been these many rogue sightings in a long time. Even before the war on rogues did not just pop up as much as they are doing now." She bit her lips in concentration as she picked up another paper to skim through. "Is it possible to make rogues?" I asked, going through the paper she just discarded. The paper reported the recent rogue sighting in the capital, the 7th this week. Underneath it, there was a clear question asking for Killian's thoughts. "What has the Alpha King got to say about the increase in rogues in the kingdom?" The question made me frown. Aside from being too forward, it gave the impression that Killian had something to do with the increase in rogues in the kingdom. I am not certain, but in the past, there were studies that tried to connect the abuse of wolf's bane with roguish tendencies, but with the decrease in rogues and the strict control of wolf's bane, the study was later abandoned. Eliza answered. Jacqueline lounged on a seat, sheathing and then brandishing her claws, her gaze raised when she felt my gaze on her. "I am a little bored," she defended her weird behavior with a shrug. "Do you think wolf's bane can make rogues?" Of the 3 of us here, she knew the most about rogues. After all, she had fought in the battle against rogues. "I don't know," she shrugged. "Rogues are crazed wolves, and although people lose their senses when they are exposed to wolf's bane, I don't think it's to the extent of going rogue. Still, I believe there is something wrong with the way rogues keep emerging out of thin air." Jack and I agreed with Eliza. After all, rogues were found right here where we lived. A place known as the most secure place in the kingdom somehow had rogues taking a walk in the forest. That evening, Killian finally got time off work. He entered the room as I dried my hair, preparing for bed. "You are back." I could not stop myself from rushing into his arms. He staggered back as I barreled into him, but he caught me, wrapping his arms around me as I buried my face in his chest. For an insane second, I felt tears well up in my eyes. "I missed you." I hummed in response to his words, hugging him tighter. He pressed a kiss to my hair and my heart tickled. "How was your day?" he asked, shrugging out of his clothes. "Unremarkable without you," I answered, and he laughed. "Did you meet Scarlet?" His smile fell when I asked the question, bugging me. Since I heard of her weird behavior and Eliza's speculation of someone making rogues, I wondered if it was true, if it was possible that Scarlet was turning rogue. "I stepped by the dungeons this afternoon, and truthfully, she doesn't look good." I frowned when he frowned. Then he sighed and I bit my lips, worried about the tension tightening his shoulders. Is she going rogue?" I asked, cautious of my words. He flinched, but then shrugged. "She doesn't seem sane, but we cannot say for certain that she has gone rogue." In a nutshell, her eyes were still the same. Soulless black eyes were a trademark of rogues, so if her eyes had not changed, she may just be going crazy from being locked up. I helped my mate wash his hair as he took a bath. He leaned his head back, his eyes closed, and a peaceful look on his face. "Have you had dinner?" I asked. His eyes fluttered open, and I was caught in his ruby-red irises. The side of his lips lifted, and I shivered, feeling my guts warm. "Will you feed me?" His words dipped low, and I bit my lips. I asked that question to stop myself from asking about Scarlet and the many things going wrong in the kingdom. He worked hard all day, and I felt it was wrong to discuss work when he was to be resting, but he didn't look like he wanted to rest now. No, he looked both hungry and invigorated at the same time. Sure, I'll feed you." I forced my voice to come out stable despite my insides melting from his hot gaze. "What would you like to have?" I asked, and he laughed, grabbing my hand and kissing the inside of my wrist. "Do you even have to ask?" His eyes, filled with tiredness a minute ago, sparkled, full of life as he got out of his bath. My mouth went dry when I faced him in his full glory. I helped undress him a while back, but something about having water dripping down his muscular body made me feel thirsty. "Will you dry me?" I blinked in wonder as a white towel entered my vision. When had he moved? "Yes," I nodded, swallowing thickly as I accepted the towel and proceeded to dry him. I felt the heat of his body as I touched him, pretending not to see his reaction. "I think you missed a spot." His eyes twinkled as I made to discard the towel. My skin heated when he motioned downwards. "Aren't you tired?" I muttered, shaking my head. "You should rest." "Haven't you noticed I sleep better after I've been inside you?" he asked, and all thoughts of leaving my tired mate to rest flew out of my mind. I woke up before him the next morning. It was rare to open my eyes to my mate in bed beside me, so I savored the sight when I opened my eyes. He looked peaceful as he slept, his usually furrowed brows relaxed with his lips slightly parted. I pushed his hair out of his face to better admire him, and his eyes blinked open. They took a second to focus, and the disoriented look in them made me smile. He mirrored my smile as he stretched. "Good morning," I greeted, and he responded in a hoarse voice that had me warming up from head to toe. Then my eyes watered. What was wrong with me? Why were my emotions all over the place recently? One minute I was ecstatic and comfortable, and the next, I felt like bawling my eyes out. "What is it?" he asked in alarm when I wiped tears from the inner corners of my eyes. "You are beautiful," I choked out, and he burst into laughter. "No, seriously," I insisted, but he continued to laugh. After my little emotional moment, we had a bath together, dressed together, and went to his office together. There we had breakfast together, and then I had to leave for my own work. Compared to Killian, I had nothing to do, but although the work of running the palace was not as pressing as the work he did, it was not something I could abandon to stare at my mate as he worked. I was about to leave when Orion entered with panicked eyes. "Killian," he exclaimed as he entered, but paused when his eyes fell on me. "Your Majesties," he cleared his throat as he paid his respects. "What is it?" I asked on behalf of my mate. Orion's gaze darted to Killian, who growled. "Are you deaf? She asked you a question," my mate snapped, and Orion's spine straightened. "Ah, yes, of course." He nodded. "See this." He handed me a paper and my face went white from reading just the front page. There was talk about the recent rogue sightings, talk of my barrenness and hybridity, but boldly written at the top of the paper was the caption, "A blessing or a lie, the story of the red-eyed king." "Find him," Killian growled. "Find whatever bastard that still dares call my mate barren." He snatched the paper from my hands and tore it up. "But," Orion frowned. "That's not the main point," I exclaimed. "It's happening. The security I felt earlier vanished. It's just like my dream. They are discrediting you." My stomach turned and the breakfast I just had threatened to come back up, but I held my breath, counting to 10. Would it happen as it did in my dream, where Hawk gained the upper hand and made my mate the villain in the eyes of the people? Would people actually believe that Killian and his ancestors were never blessed to rule over wolves? Who would believe? Killian started, but a knock on the door cut him off. The peaceful and beautiful morning quickly turned into a disaster when news of Scarlet going rogue reached us. "Killian. He will continue to go after her," Orion said, and I laughed without feeling an ounce of joy. "He has found my weakness," I muttered, and my beta nodded. I did not consider Amethyst a weakness. She was more like a treasure I would give anything to guard. "I have increased the number of guards around her to ensure her safety," Orion said. "Without a doubt, he is targeting her, but we won't let him have her." "Hawk?" I spat the name like a curse. Everything was going wrong because one man wanted this throne. In the first place, I did not even want it, but I was the last of my lineage, so there was no one else to pass it on to. My eyes skimmed through the papers in front of me. The witches, who we all knew were in hiding, had even been dragged into all this. The paper in front of me, as if mocking me, proclaimed my mate infertile. We have heard from credible sources that hybrids cannot have children. Doesn't that mean that the Luna Queen is a curse to us? If she cannot give us an heir, then she should step aside to prove she is not trying to destroy the monarchy. Surprisingly, despite people saying the goddess never appointed my ancestors as kings, this paper still tried to slander my mate by talking about the continuation of the monarchy. It was not the only paper to do so. Another paper had what they termed a revelation with a witch that discusses how it is impossible for hybrids to have children. With a swipe of my hand, I sent all the papers on my desk flying. "I have a headache," I murmured. "I've had a headache since I ascended the throne. No, this headache started when my father died, and the kingdom became my responsibility." "Shall I call the physician?" Orion asked, but we both knew it was not something the physician could help with. "I am constantly tired," I ignored my beta's words. "And for what?" Killian, his tone had a hint of warning. "How impetuous," my wolf sneered. "If I let everything burn—" "Killian," Orion called again. "I would be the bad guy." I scrubbed a hand down my face. For Seth, I bore the burdens of this kingdom. Ruling this kingdom was a divine duty, one my brother never shied away from despite how much he hated it. I tried to be like him, to honor his memory, but between Seth and my mate, it was clear who was more important. Amethyst was suffering. No matter how much she smiled and pretended not to be hurt by the dirty water constantly pouring on her, I knew better. Who would not be hurt to be called barren, evil, a curse, and whatnot? They were hurting my mate and even putting her in danger. "Amethyst won't want you to be a bad guy." My wolf growled at Orion's corny words. "What rights do you have to speak her name?" He shrank back as I growled, my eyes burning with hatred and anger. A part of me knew my anger was misguided, knew that Orion was an ally and not a foe. But rage messed with my senses. People were insulting my mate, and I could do nothing. I was supposed to be the most powerful man in this kingdom, but I could not protect my mate from the words stabbing her from every corner. I felt weak. Powerless, like my hands were tied behind me and I could not break free. "I am sorry," Orion backtracked, but I was no longer thinking of him. "But Her Majesty surely won't want you to do anything rash on her account. Despite how you feel, she clearly said yesterday that none of the words matter, so no matter how you feel." "Stop." My fists slammed into the desk, and if it was another man, if it was not my best friend and beta, it may have been impossible for me to rein in my wolf. "Do not speak as though you know my mate better than I do." "All right," Orion said in resignation. "It's distasteful." He nodded at my words. I was angry, frustrated, and getting irritated. What is Hawk's most prized possession? Even as I asked, I thought of Dark Moon, his pride and joy. The Hawk family ruled over Dark Moon since its inception. Over the years, the alphas of Dark Moon started to get arrogant. They acted like they were above the Alpha King and were leaders of an autonomous land. My father, the incompetent bastard, it was during his reign that Dark Moon finally grew wings to fly. Under his nose, they started to act out, but he never did anything, never even paid attention. "That woman," Orion began, pulling me from my thoughts. "He seems to have a weird fascination with her." "What woman?" I frowned. Hawk was too self-absorbed to pay attention to anyone. From his mate to his daughter, everyone was a tool to him. "Grace from Red Lake." I frowned as Orion spoke. There are rumors that the two are involved with each other. "Doesn't she have a mate?" Red Lake was a small pack, which I ordinarily would have never found out about if my mate did not run from them. They had an alpha who was still well and living. So how could his mate be involved with someone else? "They are not true mates, and from what I have gathered about her, she has a habit of clinging to powerful men." "Then grab her." "What?" My beta frowned. I don't think a man like Hawk would care much for a person other than himself. Hawk was too prideful, too cruel to care about anyone but himself. But if he has even the slightest bit of interest in that woman, then grab her. I am about to take everything from him. Because of him, people called my mate barren. He exposed her hybridity and put her in danger. Because of him, people said she was bad luck. A barren woman who was an evil witch that caused the recent outbreak of rogues in the kingdom. I had no proof yet, but I knew he was behind the rogues cropping up everywhere. He had to be. "How is Scarlet?" I asked my perplexed beta. She is still the same, he responded. She should have been executed earlier, but then she went rogue. We have tried all treatments, but she is not responding to any. Let her suffer her fate. But, Orion started, his mouth agape. How many rogues respond to treatment in the first place? Not even as many as 1% of rogues responded to treatment, so no one expected Scarlet's case to be different. Just make sure she doesn't die. Alone in her cell, she is attacking herself, Orion muttered. Chain her with silver. That way she would not be able to claw at herself. Chain her hands and legs. Sew her mouth shut with silver if you have to, but make sure she doesn't die. May I ask why? She has to suffer. I grinned as Orion flinched, and I want to see Hawk's face when I rip her apart. He may not care, though, my beta said, but I shrugged. Either way, she suffers. Hawk and Dark Moon take a hit when their rogue's successor is publicly executed. All in all, it will make me happy. If that is what you want, he mumbled, and I nodded. It was one of the few things I wanted. My ultimate goal was to humiliate Hawk. It was no longer enough for me to thwart his plans or beat him. Before finishing him off, I wanted him to lose every shred of dignity he ever had. To screw Hawk, I had to go after Dark Moon. They were the source of his power. All this time, I held myself back since Dark Moon controlled a large network in the kingdom, but it didn't matter much to me at that moment. It didn't matter who fell, as long as Hawk fell with everything. I greet your majesty, Alpha Baal entered after Orion. I have completed the report you entrusted me with. I grinned at his perfect timing. Did you find the culprits? I did a thorough job. I think your majesty would be pleased. Baal looked pleased with himself as he handed over his findings. Interestingly, he did do a thorough job. I did not start any of this, but it was my duty to end it all. What if things end up the same way they did in my dream? It was my greatest fear, so I sent word to Crystal and Cedric, who I hadn't seen in a while. Thankfully, they made out time to see me, even though my request to meet was quite impromptu. So that was my dream, I explained to them. My mother also made an appearance. The two women looked paler than they did when they entered, but Cedric still maintained his usual nonchalant expression. I just want to know if there is a chance to change the future. I could not help but wrinkle my dress as I clutched at it. Well, Crystal was the first to speak. I have known from Cedric about your dreams, and although no one in my memories has such abilities, I can tell you that the future is not set in stone. Wasn't that a cliché expression used to give people hope? I needed something more definite than that. What you have dreamt is a possibility, Victoria said, but as the present changes, the future is also certain to change. Yes, a part of me knew that much. My mother's future changed as far as I knew. She would not aid in the annihilation of my mate, I hoped, but I needed to know if some parts of my dream were unchanging, if some things were variables and others a constant. For example, a witch aiding Hawk may be a constant, while my mother would be a variable who could be replaced with another witch. My mate's death, I shuddered to even think about it, could be a constant in the whole thing. Are you sure? I asked. The women shared a look over their heads, but it was my mother that responded. Of course, she said with a smile. Things have already changed, haven't they? I knew she was referring to her joining hands with Hawk. If you are so worried about your mate, work harder on your illusions. Maybe then you can actually do something to protect your mate, Cedric said. Crystal smacked him across the head, but he shrugged. I am sorry, but it is the truth. You suck at it. I noticed long ago that Cedric had a habit of apologizing when he was not actually sorry. Right. My illusions. I nodded in agreement. It took a toll on both my body and mind, and as Cedric said, I sucked at creating illusions. My progress was slow enough to frustrate both Cedric and I. But that aside, dear, are you sure you want to remain here? Crystal asked. Things are bad at the Coven since we are being hounded by older covens, but I guarantee we can provide better security than this place. She looked around my office with pursed lips. Her mate is here. Surprisingly, it was Victoria that answered on my behalf. Of course, she has to stay here. Besides, who would protect her better than the Alpha King? Victoria, Crystal shook her head. This place does not have a lick of fortification. We both know how dangerous that can be. I will fortify it. My mother raised her chin. You? You alone? Crystal massaged her temple. Her ill health made her look smaller and more wrinkled, so when she massaged her temples with her head bent, she looked like a frustrated grandmother sick of the younglings around her. I am still a spirit mage. My mother raised her chin even higher. My magic may not be what it used to be, but I am not powerless. You, Crystal shook her head. If you want to cast fortification magic, I can help, Aunt Victoria, Cedric piped in. I haven't had the chance to try it out recently. Even with the both of you, Crystal exclaimed. Have you seen the sheer size of the palace? You two alone think your magic is enough to protect the entire place? I was lost in the conversation. I had a little idea what fortification magic entailed since I read about magic a bit, but I didn't know it could be cast over a place and not a person. Then join us, Cedric said with a shrug. It would be stronger if you combined your magic with ours. At this age? Such a large-scale fortification. Crystal shook her head. Then I can ask my sisters, Mother said. Yes, they will. Crystal paused before exploding. What are we even discussing? This is a wolf's den, she cried in exasperation, her voice thinning out. To involve the coven with the affairs of a wolf, what would the other covens? It's okay if you do not want to help, but this is for my daughter's safety, so I must do what must be done. What? How can you say I don't want to help? Crystal exclaimed in indignation. You make it seem as if I don't care about her safety. In the first place, who was the one who invited her to the coven and introduced her to her aunts? What has that got to do with keeping her safe? Victoria asked. I even made a room for her in the coven. I asked her to join us, whereas you abandoned her. You abandoned us all. Like that, the two women started to fight. I sipped on my peppermint tea, which helped with my increasing bouts of nausea these days, while the women argued. Hey, how is Eliza doing these days? Cedric asked in a quiet tone as the women attacked each other with words. Did she notice my absence? You are just the weird guy that visits now and then. Why do you think she would notice your absence? I snorted at Cedric, who still hadn't given up his crush on Eliza, who never paid attention to his existence. Shall I introduce myself to her? I shrugged, tuning him out. If I cast fortification magic on the palace, she would notice me, right? His bizarre words pulled my attention back to him. Don't tell me. She would benefit from it, as she lives here, so she should notice, right? You are not Eliza's type. I crushed the light in his eyes. What's her type? He asked. I am confident I can change to suit her type. I paused. In the first place, I knew nothing of Eliza's romantic life. The only thing she was concerned with was work, her family, and then work. She likes nice guys, I finally concluded. After all, Eliza herself was nice, so she must be attracted to nice guys and not manipulative people like Cedric. It's a good thing I am nice then. A person who casts fortification for someone other than themselves or their coven is infinitely selfless and thus a nice person. He shrugged. I admired his confidence. I really did. The way arrogant words spilt from his lips made me marvel. You both should stop, Cedric interrupted the women still arguing. Rather than arguing, it would be best to hurry to the coven and ask for anyone interested in helping. After all, we are selfless people who must help those in need. He stood up and dusted his clothes. Besides, why can we not help wolves? Mother Crystal, forget what the other covens will say. Wolves and witches should live together in harmony. I think hybrid babies are cute, so let us set a precedent for the future. I, for one, think mine would be. Cedric stopped his nonsensical talk as Eliza entered the office. Your Majesty. Eliza entered and paused when she noticed the weird atmosphere. I am sorry, but the Alpha King has sent for you. We were on our way, Crystal stood. Yes, tomorrow I will start the fortification. Anyone who cares about you will be there, Victoria said. What do you mean by that? Is it that easy? Crystal followed, and they continued to argue. I looked at Cedric, whose eyes were stuck to the ceiling with his ears red. I would have laughed if I wasn't nervous about Killian's sudden summon. I gave Cedric a quick smile as I exited the office with Eliza. His gaze cut to me for a second before he glared and looked away. Walking into Killian's office, I met my mate lounging. It was a different atmosphere from his usual busy one, so I was surprised. You are free? I asked as I closed the door behind me. He smiled, the smile making me shiver. It was different from his usual smile. I am taking a break from breaking my back for ungrateful people, he said, and I frowned. What? I asked in confusion, and he shrugged. I'm taking a break to visit the dungeons. Do you want to come with me? He got out of his seat and offered me a hand. I took his hand without hesitation, but I could not shake off the feeling that things were different with him. He seemed off, crueler even,